The story begins with a terrible incident. The people were gathered near the guillotine right in front of the palace. Falling to her knees, the fair-haired girl realized with horror that she was at the place of execution. The girl, in a trembling voice through the bandage, asked Alexandra what she did to deserve this. Alexandra Zen Castalia looked at the girl in bewilderment and asked how she could do such a terrible thing. She began to scream and tell the captive that she herself understood everything perfectly well, because a half-blooded member of the royal family could not have stumbled like that. The knights who stood nearby whispered to each other. At least one of them was at a loss. It was still worth foreseeing. Alexandra, wiping her tears, said that she could not even think that her sister would plan high treason, although everyone was kind to her. Standing in front of the girl, she said that lastly she wanted to express her condolences to her sister. She is an empress, and she is merciful even to traitors. After that, she began to approach Charisse and tell her poor sister that she did not want to say goodbye to her. As soon as she hung over her, Alexandra whispered to her sister that she really wished her a speedy death. The girl continued to say unpleasant things, but at that moment Charisse's gaze fell on a strange window that appeared before her eyes. Meanwhile, Alexandra finished her monologue and finally said that she finally wouldn't have to see the mudblood's face. A moment later, she said goodbye to Charisse, and the knight told the empress that she did everything right. Is this all? Just at this moment, the execution was supposed to begin. Charisse was terrified. She knew things didn't have to end this badly. Deciding that this was indeed the end of the game, the girl said that she would prefer to complete it herself, so she selected the answer yes in the window. The earth shook. The empress turned around in bewilderment, trying to understand what was happening, when she suddenly noticed that Charisse was able to get out. The girl, remembering that Alexandra always told her that without her, she would never become an empress, waved her hand and smiled. At the same moment, the brunette took off her glasses and stretched. She died again and ended up spending her last penny to get ahead. Is the difficulty too high? As it turned out, it was a popular VR game called I Became the Little Genius of the Royal Family. In this game, you need to choose one heir and make him emperor. Her first part was quite easy, but the part in which she needs to turn the chosen character into an emperor and prevent the end of the world is difficult for her. The main character, Charisse, is the secret hand that chooses the emperor. To select and create an emperor, players can freely set their status and choose their occupation. The profession that our heroine chose is a pharmacist. Initially, she only wanted to prevent the character from being poisoned. As a result, thanks to collecting, creating, and selling, the girl made a fortune. She saved up enough money for her to become empress, but Alexandra didn't believe in her, so the story was cut short. She got rid of it like nothing had happened. The girl decided that she could rest for now, because the game was already boring, so it was better to go out and get to work. Suddenly, the screen of the VR glasses lit up, and the girl jumped up in bewilderment. She didn't understand what was happening. As she started tapping on it, she thought the glasses were broken. Is it really all a matter of the cat's paws? In any case, this was the only thing she needed because they are very expensive. At that moment, the girl saw a new message in the notifications. Opening it, she saw in front of her a strange red rabbit with a timer and a package. The girl looked at the rabbit in bewilderment, trying to understand what it was, because she had never seen anything like this before. Looking down at the package, she assumed it was official, but what was the point? As it turned out, this was a secret chance for hardcore players, which comes once in a lifetime and lasts for a minute. After counting the number of zeros, she reached 1 billion. As a result, the girl decided that this was spam and that no fool would confirm this offer. The girl clicked no, but to her horror, the status of the offer changed to confirmed. Within a moment, a message arrived that the payment was successful, and the girl, in bewilderment, screamed throughout the house asking for her money to be returned. After asking for a refund, the rabbit said that since this was a special offer, there would be no refunds available. Of course, these were the manipulations of deceivers. Suddenly, something strange began to happen. The girl's body began to materialize in the air. Within a moment, she found herself in another space and was rapidly flying down, after which there was complete darkness. Over time, a bright light began to appear, and the girl lying on the floor did not understand what it was and why she was lying. At that moment, children's screams began to be heard behind her, calling our heroine names. As it turned out, apparently the girl got into the game. Our heroine understood this because she often saw this place in the game. Suddenly, the notification appeared again. This was a thank you from the author, who said that the player could become part of the character's family in reality. After this, a payment amount of 10 million was requested, which would be made within 3 seconds. Charisse thought in horror that she didn't have that kind of money. A warning immediately appeared indicating that there were not enough funds. As a result, movement was unavailable, which means the player's status was now debtor. Grabbing her head, the girl began to scream in bewilderment and ask what kind of debt she had. All this time, the offender stood in front of Charisse and watched her. She assumed that she was now completely crazy. In any case, she shook off these thoughts and again told the girl to get on all fours. Charisse, looking up, recognized the girl's face as Alexandra, but then she was too young. She was 15 at the start of the game. The girl suddenly decided that now was not the time to think about bad things, so she went into the settings and started trying to delete the account because the money was too much. As a result, the product could not be returned because it was necessary to return the fine according to local laws. 10 billion stones. Charisse read all this in horror, and Alexandra kicked her and asked why she was silent. The girl screamed in bewilderment and asked what Alexandra allowed herself to do. "She's too young. So why are they treating her so badly?" The well-known princess of the empire, Alexandra Zen Castalia, laughed and asked if she was not strict enough. Taking the wand in her hands, she said that if Charisse did not pull herself together and began to obey her, she would help her come to her senses. Our heroine sat in bewilderment and asked herself, is Alexandra really going to beat her? What is bothering her at such an early age and what needs to be done? At this point, the notification said that Charisse Wynn Castalia's memories were being synchronized. Within a moment, the setup was almost complete. The girl immediately remembered everything. Castalia is a country where the imperial family is revered, but she, Charisse, is far from this. Because she is an ordinary half-breed. Because of this, she was always looked down upon, and her life turned out differently from other nobles. She had to choose a ruler, but no matter what choice she made, the game always ended badly because the main character turned out to be the villain. Turning her head, Charisse now realized that thanks to the heroine's memories, she knew what to do next. The first thing is to escape from Alexandra. She needs to get out of the palace and find a safe place in which she will think about the future. Looking at her hands, the girl thought, can she really make her own choices? At this moment, Alexandra began to approach our heroine, who asked why the girl was so confident in herself, and now she came to her senses and was worried. Looking at the girl's sly grin, Charisse thought that it was stupid of her to think that she would blindly follow other people's orders. However, Alexandra came closer and grabbed the girl by the hair, asking her if she had gone deaf. Stepping even closer, she added that she did not like to beat the horse with a whip to make it move. Our heroine, on the contrary, as soon as Alexandra leaned over her and, finding the right moment, jumped up and hit her offender with her head. After this action, the girl immediately began to run away, and Alexandra, in bewilderment, shouted after her that she was crazy and could not escape. The girl laughed to herself and wished her beloved sister good luck with her search. Running through corridor after corridor, she saw a huge number of empty rooms, one of which would be worth hiding in. While Charisse ran, she thought about what had happened. She knew that Alexandra had a bad character, but she could not even think that she would raise her hand against the younger one. After that, the girl looked up and saw at one of the doors the very rabbit because of which she ended up here. Seeing him, Charisse could not say a word because anger overwhelmed her completely. Unexpectedly, she still screamed, showing all her hatred, saying that she would not leave everything so easily. She immediately began to run while telling the rabbit to stop. After some time, the rabbit finally began to turn into some empty room. This was Charisse's chance to finally end it. As soon as she ran into the room, she began to look around trying to find the rabbit. Not finding her target, our heroine tried to determine where that little prankster had gone. In any case, she was sure that he was here somewhere. Suddenly, the girl fell into a panic because she was worried about her cats who were left at home, and that's all because she got here and now she can't find the culprit of all this. The girl suddenly remembered that she was still being followed, so she closed the door to the room. After that, she fell to the ground, realizing that the rabbit had disappeared and she did not have time. Apparently, she would have to sit here for some time, but it was still good that she managed to hide in time. She didn't know that Charisse had such a background because the game starts at 15 years old. The girl at this stage of the game is much shorter and weaker than at the beginning of the game. Charisse suddenly decided that she should reconsider her actions. She needs to pay 10 billion stones. But how long will all this take, and how can she repay the debt, enduring all the bullying? The girl continued to think about something when suddenly she saw a mirror in her peripheral vision. Looking at it, she couldn't believe that she would see such a cutie. But if she was 15 years old, then everything would be much better. Then she thought about it and decided that being a baby wasn't so bad. It can even be cute, so she can enjoy her beauty. You need to think positively. She is 4-year-old Charisse. She wondered if she could pay off her debt by focusing on earning money. At that moment, she snapped her fingers. Just at that moment, the notification window appeared. It turns out that the buttons were the same as in the game. At the moment, the main task was to pay off the debt. Although the amount was terrifying, there were other tasks. Following him was to become the heir to the throne, and you cannot leave the game until the tasks are completed. It turns out that this game is not just about the struggle between the children of the emperor, it is about the brutal struggle of all the descendants, secretly setting each other up. The eternal emperor of Castalia was an incarnation of a god who lived for almost 200 years. Him. There are only 14 grandchildren worthy of occupying the throne. Among them, 11 are actually fighting for the throne. The main character, Charisse, was a dark horse who chose the best candidate for the throne. Our heroine doubted whether she could survive in this cruel family, and what kind of task was number 3? Everything is very strange. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from the window. It was Alexandra who finally found Charisse. Grabbing the girl by the collar, she asked if she had really decided that she could escape from her. Our heroine just remembered that when you become the heir to the throne in the game, you get the ability to fly with the help of magic. Immediately after this, the screen began to blink, just like at home, and a moment later a notification appeared that said about the loss. After just a couple of seconds, Charisse, as at the beginning of the journey, sat on the floor and listened to the screams of her sister. The screams were followed by kicks from the merciless little girl. Charisse, shielding herself from the blows, thought that she should not perceive what was happening as a game. Even after the end of the game, the essence of the task did not change. It was necessary to do the same thing. In other words, our heroine misunderstood the task. The girls suddenly decided to take a closer look at the task. There, they advised to find a way to escape from the angry Alexandra. This most likely meant that instead of trying to get out on her own, she should enlist help. The girl realized in horror that everyone here was against her. Alexandra grabbed Charisse by the hair and asked why she was ignoring her. She's already tired of this. Realizing that all the girls' lines were repeated, our heroine also decided that she was not the only one who could do whatever she wanted, so she jumped again and hit Alexandra. The girl understood that if she didn't run away, Alexandra would beat her again, although this is nothing compared to what she has already gone through. However, immediately after the impact, Charisse wondered why it was so quiet. At this time, Alexandra was at a loss. Blood was flowing from her nose, which she definitely saw. The girl screamed a moment later and asked Charisse how she dared to hit her. Our heroine was horrified because she didn't want to anger her. At this moment, the information window appeared again. It talked about a random mission. She needed help to stop the bleeding and was given 10 stones as a reward. Charisse began to walk in bewilderment, thinking that some task on the hike was more important than her life. However, she paid attention to the award. Previously, she was only given punishments, but this is some kind of ridiculous reward. 10 stones are usually given as pocket money to children. Sitting on the ground, our heroine laughed to herself, thinking that her life was under threat, and she was thinking about money. In any case, looking at the distraught Alexandra, the girl decided that she should try to complete this task. As soon as the princess ran towards our heroine, she took out her handkerchief and put it to the girl's nose. An awkward silence fell between them. Having decided that everything was fine, Charisse's hopes were destroyed, because at that moment the maid came running to the princess's screams, thinking that something terrible had happened. The woman, as soon as she entered the room, covered her face with her hand because she was terrified. She asked what happened to the princess. Charisse saw the nanny as a ray of light who came to her aid in difficult times. The woman ran to the princess screaming, saying that this was simply impossible. Charisse ran to meet her, but in the end, they separated because the nanny was running to Alexandra. Sitting down next to the girl, she looked in horror at the blood flowing from the girl's nose and asked who did it. While wiping the princess, the woman began to assume that all this was the work of Charisse. As a result, the nanny was also not on our heroine's side. No one here has ever been on her side. Now it's clear why she wanted power so much. But now she's a nobody. The nanny thought that she urgently needed to stop the bleeding. At that moment, she asked where that girl had gone, when suddenly Charisse screamed and said that she was here. The woman, as soon as she heard the girl's voice, trembled in horror, because since when did Princess Charisse suddenly speak? In any case, she decided that it was not important now because Princess Alexandra was the priority. The nanny continued to scold our heroine, reminding her that Alexandra is the Emperor's child. What will they do if she has a scar? Our heroine could not understand what would happen now. However, if Charisse's parents were alive, things would be different. At this point, Alexandra told the nanny that everything was fine. She decided to teach Charisse one small lesson. Just a moment later, as she decided to teach Princess Charisse a lesson, a glow appeared under her, which emanated with a terrible aura from her too. Squeezing the napkin tightly, she was in disbelief that a common mudblood would make her bleed and then slip that dirty thing under her nose. At this point, she used the influence of the imperial family, Dragonheart. The embodiment of Alpha and Omega is a symbol of the imperial family. It was passed down with honor from generation to generation, and history said that in a spectacular battle with the Lord of the Dragons, the illustrious emperor emerged victorious. Heaven responded to his valiant feat by giving him a great reward, a second heart that had the power of a mighty dragon. From now on, the imperial family passes this sacred relic from generation to generation. Charisse looked at all this terrible energy and wondered if Alexandra was going to incinerate her. She is forbidden to use her heart against the weak until she is 10 years old. Suddenly, a notification arrived that said about measuring the player's skills. A moment later, the Dragonheart ability was released, but with an F-rank attack. Deciding to look at more skills, the girl scrolled down and saw the SSS plus rank pharmacy skill, but as it turned out, she couldn't use it because of debt. As a result, the currently available pharmacy will be level D. Charisse couldn't believe it, because she's a researcher and she can't use the skills. Princess Alexandra, meanwhile, ordered the nanny to bring her offender to her knees. The woman had no problem obeying the princess's order. Grabbing her Charisse's hand, who insulted the nanny, the woman said that she never learned anything good from her parents. She ordered to apologize to Alexandra. Our heroine stood and held on with all her strength. She wanted her mom and dad to be next to her, but it wasn't her fault that they weren't there. At this moment, the nanny, without waiting for any action from Charisse, simply threw her to the ground. The woman then approached the girl to take her, when she suddenly heard Princess Alexandra put her on her knees. As soon as the nanny asked again, the princess told the woman to put her on her knees and make Charisse kiss her hands. Our heroine knew that kneeling and kissing hands was a sign of submission to her master. However, this is not something that a princess should ask another member of the imperial family to do, which is why Charisse screamed and said that she would not do it. Immediately after this, our heroine attacked Alexandra's leg and began to bite her. The girl, in horror, asked to stop doing this. Charisse finally stopped doing this and eventually said that her parents really didn't teach her anything. Alexandra, meanwhile, was already sick of hearing Charisse, so using the Dragonheart skill, the princess directed it at her unloved sister. Our heroine understood that she needed to run and not care about the mission. There can't be a single adult here. How can you guarantee the safety? Just at that moment, a man came into the room and in his deep voice asked what was happening here. It was a guy with red hair who said that he didn't remember his sister having children who could be taught about life. Charisse immediately became thoughtful. Had he really come to save her? The strangest thing was that this was Baikal Win Castalia, the prince of the Northern Empire. Is he even real? The guy said that he heard a strange noise and decided to find out who was teaching the etiquette of the imperial palace here. Looking at Alexandra with his piercing gaze, Baikal told her that she had acted too stupidly. The prince reminded her that it is forbidden to threaten a member of the imperial family, much less use the heart of a dragon under 10 years of age. The nanny at that moment wanted to protect the princess and said that it was actually Charisse who started it first. Baikal immediately looked at her and said that he did not ask her opinion. Moreover, if you think about it this way, she is Charisse's nanny, not Alexandra. The woman was very frightened and could not say a word. After that, Baikal approached our heroine and stared at her with his piercing gaze. According to the girl, he was quite scary. Nevertheless, he extended his hand to Charisse and asked if she was injured. The girl reached out to him and said that everything was fine. As soon as she took his hand, Baikal asked her in surprise if she was not afraid of him. The girl didn't understand at first, but after a moment she began to fake scream and tremble, saying how scared she was. The guy, of course, was sure that she was not at all afraid of him. In any case, this was a surprising rarity for him. He didn't often meet children who weren't afraid of him. At this moment, Charisse raised her gaze and looked at the prince. Despite the slight pressure in her eyes, Suddenly, he interrupted her and asked if all this could be because of the sacred heart of the dragon. Our heroine saw all the information about him, and his condition was indigestion. Charisse was certainly surprised by what she saw. Why even write about this? Shortly after this window, another one appeared, talking about new special missions. At that moment, Baikal turned and asked his assistant to take the child home. Baikal's assistant was Heoki Jin Jackal Solop. The guy told His Highness that he would immediately carry out his order. Leaning over the girl, he asked her to follow him. Charisse, in turn, looked towards the departing prince. Nevertheless, she completed the task thanks to him. At this moment, a new task appeared. It was necessary to lend a helping hand to Baikal and help with his indigestion. It was necessary to complete the task in 48 hours. This was not enough, but the reward of 1,000 stones was worth it. Our heroine definitely caught a big fish. She suddenly wondered if they give me more because of high-ranking people, or if it all depends on the risks. In any case, it was a great opportunity. Realizing that she could not miss this opportunity, the girl ran to Baikal and called him father. Everyone in the room was shocked by what they heard. Moreover, they decided that she was crazy. Our heroine didn't care, and besides, she heard everything. Nevertheless, all she had to do was treat the prince and earn a reputation. A good strategy for making money. Starting to tug at the prince's cloak, Charisse asked him to take her away from here. She was confident that he would become a personal protector. The guy looked at her in bewilderment and asked what father means, because his name is Baikal. The prince's assistant intervened in the conversation and said that, apparently, the princess would now call him father. The girl thought that Jackal Solop was helping her a lot, and now all she had to do was look cute. Lowering her gaze to the floor, she said that she wanted to be a daughter. Our heroine thought to herself that it was time to say goodbye to her precious adult life. Once you start, you need to see it through to the end. The girl suddenly started talking about how Charisse is a good, kind, and obedient girl. As it turned out, she is the daughter of his sister, which means that they are relatives. She told Dad that if he was unwell, she could help him. Baikal quoted her in surprise and said that the words, "Give me your hand," sounded like she wanted to get rid of him. The girl immediately began to say that he had ordinary indigestion and she was not going to break his neck. The guy laughed and said that he was just joking. Although our heroine was surprised by his sense of humor, she said that in order to make him feel better, he needed to prick his finger. The blood will flow out and the stomach will stop hurting. Looking at the girl's hands, the prince asked if she was sure she wasn't hurt. Hiding her hands, our heroine said that in any case, this did not happen because of their quarrel. After thinking a little, the girl said that she just fell while playing, nothing more. In fact, adults did not like problem children. Therefore, you need to be calm and obedient so that they want to adopt her. The prince at that moment called Jackal Solop and told him that he was changing his mind. The man asked if this meant that the girl did not need to be taken home. Taking the girl in his arms, he said that he had been understood correctly. He will take her to the room himself. Smiling, he said that she was not afraid to call herself his daughter, so he would keep an eye on her. Our heroine immediately realized that everything had worked out for the campaign. Someone actually took her side. At that moment, a window appeared in front of her, which stated that in order to unite the bodies of Charisse and Yoon Chae-ri, her body would temporarily switch to sleep mode. The girl understood that she certainly didn't need it now. Nevertheless, she could not influence this, so she immediately fell asleep. Unexpectedly, Baikal called Alexandra Zen Castalia, who immediately jumped up and responded. The prince told her never to touch this child again. Otherwise, if she dared to lay even a finger on her, he would take her under his wing. Sighing heavily, he decided that she already understood everything, so he went about his business. From that day on, Alexandra was banned from leaving the palace for a month. Heoki Jin Jackal Solop suddenly called Highness and asked what they should do with the little princess. The guy said that if she wants to be his daughter, how can she leave her? Nevertheless, he said that Princess Charisse fell asleep, which means it's worth asking the nanny what happened here. The prince's assistant asked what further orders would be. Baikal told him to act in accordance with the law. The sleeping Charisse received a notification from the system, which said that the body could not recover immediately, so you need to take care of yourself. After an indefinite amount of time, Charisse finally woke up. She immediately began to stretch, thinking that she felt much lighter. Having felt the bed, I assumed that it was expensive because it was very soft, and it also smelled delicious. It's great to live in comfort, but she wanted to know where she was. At this moment, a joyful voice was heard from behind, who was glad that the princess had already woken up. This was the eldest daughter of the Everville family, Sophia Everville. The girl introduced herself and said that her family was one of the families serving the prince, our heroine. As soon as she heard the name, she thought about it, because she had already heard it. The 500-year history of Castalia remembers the names of not only the nobility. The imperial family is served by dozens of different families. Among them was the Everville family. As many said, this was one of the most loyal families. Charisse thought about those rumors that say that this family will not even cross itself at gunpoint. However, it is good to have such a person next to Charisse. All she had to do was perform one action. The girl wrapped herself in a blanket and with a wide smile said that she was very pleased to meet Sophia, who immediately could not resist such cuteness. Hugging the girl, she hurried to please her with the fact that now she would be her nanny. The girl said that His Highness personally gave the order because he could not leave the princess in those terrible conditions. His Highness found out about how horribly she was treated, as well as what happened in the chambers, so he became so angry that he called her. Our heroine thought that it was all because of her last name. She is treated this way because she is part of the Wynn dynasty. Of course, the princess liked it here much more. Besides, at that moment the nanny told the princess to dress up and come down for breakfast. A moment later, Sophia was sitting over the girl and braiding her a beautiful ponytail with a blue bow. As soon as she finished, she immediately asked the girl if she liked it. Our heroine smiled and said that she really liked it. Already going to breakfast, Charisse asked the nanny if Dad would have breakfast with her. Sophia smiled and said that His Highness had promised to come to breakfast with her. The girl suddenly asked awkwardly if she could only eat rice. These words surprised the nanny a little. Charisse continued to say that she was not hungry at all and asked not to eat as she was full. Sophia still didn't understand why the girl said that. Looking at the nanny, the girl continued to say that she really didn't want to, although she herself understood how ridiculous it sounded. Sophia Everville she said that she didn't know what would happen next, but most likely Charisse would stay here for some time. Charisse asked if they didn't like her presence. The nanny immediately told her that this was not so because she was Kiina's daughter. His Highness has other brothers and sisters, but he always treated Kiina in a special way. Our heroine understood what and how, but nevertheless, she was still very lucky. Although why, in this case, did Baikal leave her for so many years? Even though this is just a game scenario, Yoon seems to be taking it too deeply. The nanny, meanwhile, told Princess Charisse that she would not be bullied in this palace, and if anyone dared, she would rip everyone's throats out. Having told the girl that the weather was good today, they went outside where breakfast was ready. Seeing a whole bunch of delicious food, Princess Charisse's eyes ran in different directions. She, of course, knew that Castalia is an empire of arts, but even the table was set with taste. At this moment, Prince Baikal turned to Charisse and asked if she had a least favorite food. Looking forward to a delicious breakfast, Charisse said there was nothing she didn't like. She's not a picky child. The prince asked if this was true. The girl thought to herself that this was the obvious truth, because she was a good girl. An obedient child should be cute all the time and should not cause problems. Baikal was just beginning to think that she could become his daughter. Nevertheless, he was surprised and could not believe that she was so picky. As it turned out, by this time the prince's indigestion had still not gone away. Deciding that His Highness shouldn't worry about this, Charisse grabbed the cutlery and began to look at the food. Our heroine will take care of everything, but she only needs his hand. She, of course, hasn't done this for a long time, so she's not sure whether everything will work out. Her grandfather showed her how to stab. Throwing the piece of paper on the floor, the man shouted and asked in bewilderment which faculty of pharmacology we were talking about, because he wanted to see the medical one. Yoon Chae-ri told her grandfather in horror that she didn't go to medical school because she wanted to become a scientist and develop a new medicine. In any case, the man stood his ground and did not want to hear anything. He spent a lot of money so that his granddaughter became a doctor, As a result, she became the main disgrace in the family, and grandfather decided that he had worked in vain. Charisse, meanwhile, thought it would be better to eat first, and then think about everything. Looking at the delicious chicken, she thought about how tasty it was, and that's why she decided to try it first. Having wished everyone a bon appétit, at that moment a plate of soup moved towards her. The girl was perplexed by this, and immediately asked her dad what it was. Prince Baikal reminded her that she said that she was not picky, and that pea soup was very healthy. The girl looked away and said that she would like something different. A moment later, stewed cabbage stood in front of her. The prince, looking at Charisse in bewilderment, told her that he chose her only because she said that she was not picky, but in the end she refuses everything. Our heroine, realizing that it was impossible not to please the prince, said that if necessary, she would eat everything. At this moment, Jackal laughed and told Highness that he should not tease the princess. Still, you should not force your child to be a vegetarian. The prince himself understood that the girl did not like vegetables. In this case, he asked the assistant to come up with dishes that would make her want to eat. When I started eating Charisse, I didn't understand why people were making fun of her, because she's not picky. As soon as she chewed the food, she was shocked at how delicious it was. How could you cook so deliciously? She immediately began reaching for other dishes. Suddenly, a maid turned to our heroine and asked her to give her some food. It was Nanya Lindensky. She promised to make the girl feel at home. Princess Charisse was incredibly happy to be part of Nanya's care. The woman smiled and said that she was flattered, and also said that it was okay to talk to her on a first-name basis. After some time, all the food was eaten, and Charisse's smile was already leaving its boundaries. She was incredibly happy because everything was delicious. After that, our heroine looked at the prince and decided that it was time for her to finish the mission she had started. Feeling someone's gaze, Baikal turned and, in bewilderment, asked Charisse what she wanted. The girl was surprised that she was discovered. The prince laughed and said that he noticed her scheming look, and he also added that she could talk about anything that bothered her. At that moment, the girl jumped up and went to her dad, saying that she wanted to ask him for something. Looking into Prince Baikal's eyes, Charisse asked if she could poke his finger with a needle. The guy's reaction, of course, was terrifying, which the girl did not understand. "What's the big deal?" Jackal asked in bewilderment if the princess really wanted to mock his majesty. Charisse started saying that she wanted to help, because her dad had indigestion, and the injection would help. Baikal's assistant did not understand what kind of black magic this was. The girl, of course, was glad that at least he understood, but if this had been offered to her, she would have been taken aback. At this moment, the man skeptically asked how she knew that the prince had stomach problems. Our heroine said that Dad ate very little and she thought it was because of digestive problems. Jackal was surprised and said that the princess was very attentive. The girl was embarrassed and said that it was all nothing. As soon as she turned her gaze to the prince, she was horrified because his silence was frightening, and he wasn't really going to speak. Does he doubt the knowledge of a 4-year-old child? She understood that she needed to justify herself somehow, but at that moment the prince's assistant asked the girl what kind of treatment this was. Charisse screamed sharply, saying that it was a dragon. The man asked again, and she said that she dreamed about him today. This huge dragon told her a lot, and he told her what to do when her stomach hurts. He also spoke about the effects of various herbs, and taught how to use them for medicinal purposes. As a result, she said that the dragon and sleep taught her all this. Is that really cool? Now all that remained was to hope that they would believe. The nobles began to whisper among themselves to reach a final verdict. It would be great if she could use the game's plot as an excuse. After all, everything still sounded like an eloquent lie. Deciding not to walk for a long time, the prince's assistant asked him directly if he was sure. To this, Baikal answered him that he saw no reason to refuse. Thinking that a 4-year-old child would not harm him, he called Nanya and asked him to prepare everything according to the princess's orders. The woman bowed down and said that she would carry out this order from the prince. At this moment, Sophia Everville asked Princess Charisse what was needed for this operation, because she would give the entire list to Lady Nanya. The girl approached her and asked her to bend over so she could speak into her ear. After some time, Sophia handed the list to Nanya Lindensky and said that everything that was needed was written here. The woman immediately opened the notebook to look at the things that would be needed and was very surprised. The princess asked to prepare everything according to the list. First, you needed a clean needle. To avoid pain, it was necessary to take the longest and thinnest one. You also had to take bandages and remember to disinfect them. Closing the notebook, Nanya Lindensky decided that the princess was very sweet. She will start preparing now. At this moment, Jackal Solip approached our heroine and asked in surprise why she told everything only to Sophia. The issue actually lay with the prince, who himself agreed to this but asked the same question. Will it hurt a lot? In general, she said so quietly so as not to disturb Daddy. The prince's assistant was surprised that the princess was worried about His Highness. Charisse looked away and embarrassedly said that it was. She thought to herself that everything would be great if it were so. Initially, this palace was the residence of the emperor. It was an impregnable fortress. She played this game for 8 years and knows how hard it is to get here. Searching for spies, bribing servants, arson. As a result, nothing worked out for Yoon Chae-ri. It was so hard that she never got anywhere and ended up here after being adopted. She was immensely happy about this and moved her hands like a villain. At that moment, Baikal reminded her that he was not her father. Just at that moment, Lady Nanya arrived with all the preparations. Our heroine thought that she came here just in time, and now it was time to start. Sophia Everville was very afraid and, in bewilderment, asked if she really wanted to launch the game under her fingernail. The girl said that this is not so. The first step is to tie the right place. Having tied her finger with a bow, Charisse told Dad that he now has a beautiful finger. The second step was to heat the needle. Heo Kijin Jackal Solip, who watched every action of the girl, asked in surprise why to do this. The girl said that if you warm it up, it will be less and more. The man was actively recording everything. And finally, the last step was to tighten it a little. At this moment, the prince said that he was ready. As Yoon Chae-ri began to pull the needle towards the prince's finger, she told herself that she could do it. Only a little blood was needed, and it also didn't need to go too deep. The girl's main task was not to make a mistake with the place, and now, injection. As soon as she removed the needle from her finger, a notification appeared saying that the task was completed. She cured the prince. Princess Charisse immediately asked the prince how he was feeling. The guy, looking at his finger, said that he really felt better. Baikal looked at the girl and asked how she did it. While cleaning the wound, Charisse said that she made it a simple folk remedy. The prince asked again in surprise, and our heroine immediately began to say that this was a special technique that ordinary people had never even dreamed of. Just a little more and they could have seen her through. Baikal looked at her thoughtfully. At that moment, his assistant told His Highness that he could praise the girl because she was such a good guy. The guy himself agreed with this. Putting his hand on her head, he told her that she was a great fellow. Jackal added that this is not even enough. Doctors are so cowardly. You only have to say a word, and they are already shaking with fear and they need treatment. The girl not only took the prince's hand, but also pricked him with a needle. This was the first time the man had seen this in his life. Suddenly, a notification arrived saying that the prince's indigestion was now only half of the character's condition. Do I really need to prick another finger? Suddenly, an additional task appeared. It was necessary to complete the matter to the end, because the indigestion of the divine prince had not completely passed. In the garden, there was a daughter of your palace, and there are plants that have different effects. You need to find herbs that can cure indigestion and make a potion out of them. The prince's condition will continue until our heroine brews an effective natural potion. The reward for the task is 10,000 stones. Yoon Chae-ri was undoubtedly shocked by the award, so she urgently needed to take on this task. Suddenly, an idea came to mind. The tree that begins to bloom first with the onset of spring is the plum, a symbol of fidelity. Its flowers make their way through the snow. Plum syrup is considered a natural digestive aid. It helps with minor ailments, so it is better to make it in advance and in larger quantities. After training, men are usually exhausted and very thirsty. If she gives them this drink, it will increase her reputation. She immediately began to think about where the plums might be. It seems she saw plum trees on the way here. They grow on the territory of the imperial palace. She wondered if she could use them, and also wanted to ask how long she could stay here. But Prince Baikal and his assistant were still talking. Suddenly, the prince said that he would already go. Our heroine asked if he was already leaving, to which Baikal replied that he had a lot to do. He immediately said that if the problem was Princess Alexandra, then there was no need to worry. She will not leave her palace for a month. Of course, that wasn't the case. If she fails to gain trust, she will miss the chance she barely had. The girl didn't even know what to say to detain the prince, when suddenly she shouted, "Daughter!" The prince looked at her in bewilderment and asked what she was talking about. Charisse said he understood her correctly. He told her that he would see if she could become his daughter. She thought he was going to test her. The prince's face did not change at all at that moment. He was still very surprised. Has he forgotten? However, Yoon Chae-ri knew that she should not retreat. Moreover, she has nowhere to go. Besides her, there are many people with the surname Win, so in order to survive here, she needs to hold tightly to the divine prince who will help her. Thinking for a moment, the guy decided that she could really become his daughter. Unexpectedly, he said that children who play happily are good children. Charisse asked again in bewilderment. Baikal said that everything was right and that she should go play. On such a nice day, you don't want to sit in the palace and do nothing. The girl, perplexed, asked again if she really could. Baikal asked in surprise if she really wanted to study, to which the girl screamed and said that this was not so. The prince told her to report to him tomorrow how well she played today, so she shouldn't worry about anything. Just play as much as you want. After lunch, there was no one in the palace, but our heroine also had business. Yoon Chae-ri was very surprised. She never thought that the prince would ask her to play. Anyway, come what may, making plum syrup is also a game, so today there will be a tactile game. Already sitting in the office, Jackal Solip said that although he had guessed, he did not think that the prince would really lift the spell. Baikal replied that if the girl wants it that way, then they should let her. However, the prince's assistant told him that the young princess had no idea how amazing it was that she managed to touch the prince. Rising from the table, the guy said that there was no reason for this. She's just great, isn't she? Looking out the window, the prince's assistant was glad that the Midnight Palace would become brighter. The owner of the palace has returned here, so the situation here will change. Nevertheless, in this radiance, a small star also sparkled very unexpectedly. Prince Baikal watched the girl from the window and suddenly, after silence, asked Jackal if she looked like her. The man nodded his head without thinking twice. After her, she is the first who was able to approach Prince Baikal without fear and, moreover, hug him. The guy said that all this was true, because the youngest princess was like that too. She was not the least bit afraid of the prince. The girl's mother was Kiena Win Castalia, but it is literally impossible to find out who the father is. The documents say that she was blessed, but the girl doesn't look like that at all. The pronunciation is just not quite correct. This was discovered during the interrogation of the nanny. However, as Hyokijin Jackal Solip learned, she was truly blissful. Although he didn't understand how, she immediately remembered it. The prince asked if it could happen so suddenly to a child, to which the assistant said that she could have been withdrawn. But after the prince appeared, she saw help in him. Northern and southern part, one state divided into two. The Castalia Empire is ruled by 2 emperors, but equality in governance is only in words. In fact, real power belonged to the Northern Emperor. This is the first swordmaster to resist the dragon, Rarehood Royal Castalia. Baikal noticed that the old man does not seem to get tired of ruling. He asked the assistant how many years it had been this year, to which he said that Rarehood's reign had exceeded 150 years. But still, okay, if only he still loved his family, but he doesn't even know how many descendants he has. All he values is his 3 children. The prince asked who he was talking about. Hyokijin Jackal Solip listed the guys. This is Jen, Jin, and Win. The man suddenly added to these words that Prince Baikal himself is a descendant of Win. But in principle it was like that. Pedigree of Rarehood's only daughter. The faction supporting Win was very powerful and stronger than the others. Throwing a stack of papers, the guy decided that he should find out what happened in the palace while he was away. What happened to make Jen hate Win? Prince Baikal told his assistant that all the rats who cause trouble will answer for everything. The man bowed down and said that he would prepare a plan for destruction. Disdain for the princess and the appropriation of her property meant that he did not feel sorry for his life. However, let Sophia ask Charisse if she has any jewelry. If they are not there, then perhaps the remains are melted-down jewelry. The prince said that the princess could not use the melted-down jewelry of impoverished aristocrats. They need to find a good master now. Suddenly, he became thoughtful. Although it will be easier to entrust the making of jewelry to a master, it will take too much time. He cannot afford even the slightest delay. Sophia Everville should use the first level of the 4th floor and take what suits the princess. After some time, the prince's assistant sent a dove. He thought that Sophia would appreciate all this, because it is an honor to visit that place where the magic of the prince is cast. Baikal at that moment said that there was only the first level, so all that was there were clothes and jewelry. Unexpectedly, Hyokijin Jackal Sulip asked His Highness if by any chance the jewelry he was going to give to Lady Kiina was there. Taking a deep breath, he said that he also remembered this. It was a long time ago. One day, a girl asked her brother to go play with him. The guy rejected his sister's requests. He thought that if she touched him, she would simply be torn to pieces. Of course, the girl was not happy with this turn of events, so she often cried. Baikal thought to himself if children liked treasures and decorations. The action moves further into the future. Sitting at the table, the guy asked his sister in bewilderment if she was really going to leave the imperial palace. The girl said that all this struggle for the throne and confrontation between factions is not for her. She thanked her brother for being there and wished him to be happy. If she left, she should have lived a happy and calm life. But nevertheless, he saw a strange letter addressed to him. Emotions suddenly hit the guy's head. Jackal asked Highness if he was okay, to which he said that this often happens to him when he remembers that day. The prince's comrade asked him why his memories were erased by magic that even he could not remove. The guy said it was because of those 4 years at the bottom of the lake. He had weakened during all this time, but was it possible? Hyokijin Jackal Sulip said that this was surely necessary to suppress the prince's power. But the prince's power was truly terrifying, which even the strongest did not want to feel. In any case, if he returned to the past now, he would do everything differently. He has always been a heartless person. Finally, he decided to change the subject and asked the assistant if he had sent a letter to Sophia. The man assured that this letter would soon reach her. The guy said it was bad and then suggested we talk about urgent matters. Jackal asked what kind of cases they were going to talk about. Baikal turned to his friend and asked if it was not obvious. Of course, there will be a long conversation about daughter Kiina. Meanwhile, our heroine was running through the forest. At that moment, she lost track of time and couldn't even understand how much time had passed. It has been a long time since she ran as breathtakingly as today. As soon as she sat down by the tree, she looked up at the sky and thought, after all, His Highness is truly a very good dad. She decided that first she would charm him and become his daughter, and then Baikal would admire only her. Well then, with the help of power, she can easily complete the task and return home. In other words, this is a project to bring the cat back, all for the day when her plan will be fulfilled. As they say, go princess. At that moment, behind the girl came the voice of Sophia Everville, who had finally caught up with the princess. Charisse was seriously scared. Nevertheless, Sophia took the princess's hand and said that she had good news. His Highness allowed them to enter the 4th floor. Yoon Che-ri, who of course did not get to this point and could not understand what was going on. The divine prince lived in the Midnight Palace, a 3-story building. According to the design, there was no 4th floor. But then how does he get to a floor that doesn't exist? The reason was very simple. The 4th floor is a secret floor that the prince created using magic. When he became an adult, he built it using the dragon's heart. There he keeps his trophies, jewelry, paintings, fragments. All items are divided into 5 ranks, depending on importance. These are very expensive items. Of course, Sophia said that permission to take something from there is a great honor that cannot be compared with anything. Charisse sighed and said that this was the way to start. Sophia apologized, but said that she would like to go to the 4th floor right now. Our heroine understood that she came here for plums. The girl asked in a trembling voice, "Will it be possible to do this later?" The nanny was surprised and asked what she was doing. The girl pointed her finger at the tree behind her and said that she wanted to make compote from the fruits of this tree. Sophia Everville, in bewilderment, she said that there were inedible fruits. Yoon Che-ri asked herself in bewilderment, did Sophia just call plums Urslum? The girl said that in the imperial palace, even the most useless things are not simply thrown away. Most likely, the fruits are now in storage. In this case, the princess tied a bow and said that if it was not very urgent, she would go and get her father's gift a little later. Sophia was of course surprised, but supported the girl's idea and agreed with her. The guys went forward, and the girl suddenly said to the princess, "His Highness said that they can play as much as they want, so they can go to the storage room and check the Urslum." The action shifts again to the prince and Jackal. Baikal asked what the most important problem is now, to which the man replied that there are several problems. The first was the dragon's heart. Baikal laughed and said that even in this she looks like Kiina. Pointing to the ball, Jackal said that it was a measuring device that he had left near the princess's bed yesterday. It had to be filled. However, after a whole night it remained practically empty, so it is unknown whether she can use the dragon's power. Baikal summed it up and said that in other words, Charisse is the same as an ordinary person. In this case, if this weak girl begins to participate in the battle for the throne at the age of 11, a misfortune may happen. Jackal asked if it would be better to abandon the idea of transferring the throne to her in advance. What if she left the palace? The prince said that this was pointless because it had happened many times that members of the imperial family who left the palace became ordinary aristocrats. As a result, they supported their own faction and simply continued to fight outside the palace. Almost nothing will change. In this case, the question was what to do best. With her own strength, Princess Charisse will not be able to defeat the weakest descendant of the emperor. Jackal added that she is not particularly able to defend herself. Unexpectedly, Baikal said that there is still one way. The man began to think about what method he was talking about, when suddenly he saw the light. Hitting the table, he told the Majesty that this would be quite difficult. The prince asked in surprise who said he couldn't do it. Jackal began to say that this is not the case, but that it would be better for them to think about everything again. Nevertheless, Baikal said that members of the imperial family cannot so easily change their place of residence. Her reputation will be ruined. Jackal at this moment no longer understood Highness a little. The guy explained that if the princess is weak, then rumors will begin to circulate, which will be known in just one evening. As a result, not only Charisse's reputation will be destroyed, but also that of her mother, Kiina. Looking at his aide, the prince asked if he really wanted to see the Wynn name trampled upon. He asked to remember the main thing. Criminals are in awe when they hear the name Wynn. As Jackal himself said, members of the imperial family cannot come and enjoy protection without a title, so there is only one option left. Adopt her. Jackal smiled and said that it worked out that way in the end. The prince asked what his answer was. The man replied that he would deal with this matter first. Clutching the princess's ribbon in his hands, the prince gradually began to realize that he would have a daughter. Suddenly, 2 children's silhouettes popped into his head, and that's all because he already has children, Edis and Gurgis. As befits the offspring of a divine prince, and had not been strong since childhood, the dragon's heart was in perfect condition, so Baikal did not worry about them. Baikal couldn't stop thinking that he didn't really like all this. He wanted the princess to be well looked after, and to grow up without being despised. Was it really that difficult to take care of such a wonderful child from the very beginning? Looking out the window, the prince thought about how cruel a man was, even his great-grandfather. Unexpectedly, Baikal asked if the girl really said that she was trained by a dragon. Jackal asked again in bewilderment. The guy said it was about acupuncture. Charisse then said that she was taught by a dragon in a dream. Jackal, continuing to write, said that he was scared, and there are dragons in their families, so it is possible. Nevertheless, the prince was skeptical about this and thought that there was something wrong here, or rather something else. Jackal asked if it now means that the princess lied, to which the guy said that this is not entirely true. She rather came up with it. According to the nanny they interviewed, Charisse had never received any training. Naturally, she doesn't know how to speak correctly, or letters or table etiquette, but she knows a lot, as if someone taught her this. Baikal suddenly became thoughtful. Is this really a dragon? The prince then decided that he shouldn't make any guesses. The first step was to spread a rumor about a princess who was under the protection of a dragon. She is not wretched, but simply educated by a dragon in a dream. Jackal leaned over and asked if he should talk about the fact that the prince was going to adopt this special princess. Nevertheless, he laughed, and then asked Baikal how he would tell his sons about this. Baikal replied that they would soon return from the academy, and then he would introduce it to them. Jackal has been very busy with his workload in recent days. Apparently, his destiny is to be always busy. The prince thought that he would do everything anyway. Unexpectedly, the man asked whether Baikal had really put Princess Alexandra under house arrest. Is it possible to do this? The guy said she bullied Charisse and egged her on. For this, she will write letters of apology for a whole month. That's how it should be conveyed to her verbatim. Once taking the leaves, Baikal does not feel the girl's aura, which means that if she asks someone to write it with her, then this is ineffective. Jackal suddenly started writing letters. He simply loves various intrigues. The prince assumed that his comrade liked it, And then he thought about it and realized that this was where the confrontation with Wynne began. Faction pride needed to be restored. At this moment, Jackal asked what he should tell Princess Charisse. "Shouldn't you tell her first?" The prince said that he would tell her about this later, when she was completely accustomed to life in the palace. "If you tell her about this now, she might get scared and die." Jackal laughed and asked if it was a joke, to which Baikal said that he was serious. Suddenly, the prince's gaze was drawn to a strange page with information. It talked about everything you need for adoption. Jackal said that these are necessary items for Charisse if he does not want the girl to grow up like his two sons. The guy picking up the paper said that he planned to learn all this gradually. Unexpectedly, the prince was approached by the butler, who said that Princess Charisse wished to obtain his permission. The man asked to speak quickly. As it turned out, the request was to obtain permission to use all the Ursulum from the storage facility. Jackal turned around in bewilderment and said that these fruits were inedible. The man said that he himself did not know where the girl would use them. Baikal, of course, thought about it. The man asked the prince what he would do. If you think about it like that, he didn't say anything to Charisse, and she herself guessed that he had indigestion. The girl used a remedy that he could not even think of. She might have an idea right now. In this case, he decided to give her permission to do what she wanted and use the Ursulum for her own purposes. A moment later, the prince approached Jackal Salop and asked him to add one more item to the list. Taking the pen in his hands, the man asked what needed to be added. Baikal said that it is necessary to write down all the books that describe how to raise a daughter in the most ordinary family. Jackal asked again in bewilderment, to which the man replied that he was not interested in how many books he would get. He will read them all, analyze them, and ultimately become the ideal father for Princess Charisse. Jackal immediately realized that His Highness had some strange desire. The guy couldn't even think about what kind of books these were and where it was written. Surely those that talk about raising children. He should have looked among them. Meanwhile, the action moves to the warehouse. The man and Sophia Everville poured Ursulum and asked why all this. The girl said that she wanted to make medicine. The man suddenly said that he had been caring for the plants in the palace for half his life, but had never heard that Ursulum had medicinal properties. Yoon Che-ri was horrified to hear all this, because wild plum does not have much of any taste if the whole fruit is eaten. Understandably, it was considered inedible here. The girl suddenly told them what the dragon told her in a dream. This is a special way that cannot be found anywhere. After that, she clapped her hands and said that now it was time for them to start making compote from plums, or rather, from Ursulum. After some time, they were completely busy cooking. Sophia said that the girl puts in a lot of sugar. Is this really going to make a cure? Our heroine said that the fruits need to be candied so that they are infused, so you will need a lot of sugar. Immediately after this, it was necessary to start cleaning the drains. The girl asked the princess how to wash them. The girl told her that she needed to twist it and wash it carefully so that there were no stains left. Sophia nodded and said she understood. Suddenly she looked into the basket and noticed that there were also spoiled plums. They are tasteless and they won't make compote. Thinking that they needed to go through them as soon as possible and throw away the spoiled ones, Charisse began to actively engage in this. To everyone's horror, Uncle Tomby screamed. The man said something came at him from behind and hit him on the head. Charisse decided it wasn't worth throwing them around. Just at that moment, the man turned to our heroine and asked what he should do next. Princess Charisse smiled and told her uncle that she must ask him to do something very important and dangerous. Within a moment, the man was skillfully sitting and pulling out the bones from the Ursulum. Tomby even started saying that they underestimated him because he worked with a knife in the garden. Charisse was incredibly happy because she would quickly cope with this matter. Uncle is the best. Nevertheless, it was not even necessary to take out the seeds because they contain a high content of amygdalin, but if she wants to make syrup, it is better to take them out. Although if you eat a lot of them, it can turn into dangerous poison. Large amounts are poison, small doses are medicine. That's why restaurants used to display apricot kernels at the checkout counter. As a child, she once thought it was candy and ate one. The girl's mother asked in bewilderment if she really ate it, because children shouldn't do this. Nevertheless, the princess was taken out of her thoughts by the guys who were sitting idle and asking what to do next. Sometime later, after they mixed the plums with sugar, they filled the glass jar halfway and the compote was almost ready. Hugging all the jars, the girl now said that they would need to leave this medicine for 100 days. Sophia, admiringly, asked where such a wonderful person came from. Charisse smiled and said that she came from her mother's belly. Of course, everything was fine, but she was worried that she had to wait 100 days. Will the prince really have indigestion during these 100 days? The girl felt a little sorry for him. At that moment, Sophia turned to the princess and said that there is such magic that speeds up the fermentation process. It could have been used. In Our Heroine, she suddenly asked how much she could speed up all this. Sophia Everville thought about it and said that she didn't even know. Perhaps fermentation will take place in a few hours. Charisse was at a loss. This means that she will be able to give the prince compote tomorrow morning. In this case, she will be able to complete the task and distribute it to the knights. She didn't even have to wait the whole 100 days, which was incredibly exciting. The princess's nanny, standing near the door, told her that she would go out to ask for magic and would return soon. Thus, another day passed. Our heroine, sitting by the window, tried to catch a dragonfly. At that moment, the princess's nanny ran into the room, who was surprised that Highness got up so early. The girl asked if Charisse was tired, to which she replied in the negative and asked her to do her hair. Sophia Everville. I suddenly started thinking about what they would wear today. The girl said that they could choose any dress. Within a moment, she was in it. The girl, of course, began to thank Sophia for creating such beautiful images. Immediately after this, the girl said that she could not go to the lake today, otherwise the fishermen would see her and faint from amazement. Right after they got dressed, it was time to go to breakfast. Our heroine was now only worried about plums. Did they insist? She wanted to check it as soon as possible and take the compote to the prince. The girl suddenly asked the nanny if she wanted to see what happened to the urslem they soaked yesterday. Sophia asked in surprise how she understood this. The princess smiled and said that she knew everything. After that, she suggested looking into the kitchen while breakfast was being prepared. Everyone in the kitchen was happy to see her. Cook Maya was delighted with the cuteness of the girl. She immediately asked what kind of urslem medicine it was. Our heroine led her with her into the wine cellar, in which they stored all the cans of plums. They were in perfect condition and there was no mold. Magic is very convenient. The woman turned and asked the girl in surprise whether they should really put it on the table like that. Charisse immediately said that first you should strain and pour everything into a jar. The medicine is not urslem itself, but the liquid. Once they have strained the medicine, they will need to seal it tightly. As a result, it will need to be stored in the same way as other medications. Grandma Maya smiled and thanked her for her help. Nevertheless, our heroine said that she should do everything herself because it was her idea. After some time, everything was ready. The girl was walking with a tray with medicine on it, and Grandma Maya was talking about how she needed to go have breakfast. She was incredibly happy, and now all that was left was to quickly bring the compote. The girl hoped that Prince Baikal would like the taste. As soon as she approached the dining room, she was horrified to discover that the prince was not there. Jackal told the princess that His Highness got up very early, had breakfast before dawn, and got down to business. He doesn't avoid her at all. However, the girl was very upset that her dad had gone somewhere and didn't tell her anything. Jackal asked the princess not to be upset because His Highness usually wakes up at dawn at 4 a.m. According to his schedule, he has breakfast and does things in the morning to be more flexible. It is precisely because of this that around dawn he trains with other knights. Charisse sighed and understood the prince. She couldn't think how diligent he is, and his indigestion doesn't even bother him. In any case, she decided that she would come later. Unexpectedly, the girl asked if she would be a big hindrance if she showed up at the training session. Jackal thought a little and still decided that most likely this should not cause problems. After some time, the girl ran across a field that smelled of sweat. At some point, the girl stopped and asked the nearby people if they had seen the divine prince by chance. The guys were overjoyed by the girl's cuteness, and then they said that the prince was on the other side. Just at that moment, Prince Baikal appeared behind them and asked in bewilderment what had happened. The guy told the princess that it was very dangerous here, then why was she here? Our heroine immediately ran to him and started calling for Dad. The guys began to whisper among themselves, trying to understand at what moment the prince's daughter appeared. Charisse came closer to Dad and said that she came because she missed him. The prince looked at her in surprise and said that they had only met yesterday. The guys began to speak even more quietly and asked if they had ever heard the prince speak like that. The guy said he hadn't heard, and it gave him goosebumps. Meanwhile, Charisse hugged Baikal tightly and told him that they didn't see each other today, and besides, she brought a gift. In this case, the guy said that he should apologize, especially if she had prepared a gift. Clicking her finger, the princess said that the gift was a medicine that you drink when your stomach hurts. Suddenly, the whole crowd started buzzing. Many of the guys began to say that their stomachs hurt too. Baikal was very angry at people who were trying to get the princess's attention. Once they get close, they are no longer residents. Charisse asked her dad what was wrong, to which he told her that everything was fine. After that, he turned to the crowd and told them that they were daydreaming and it would be better for them to forget. As soon as the prince tried the compote, the girl asked how it tasted. Baikal told her that it was pretty good. The princess's nanny confirmed everything, saying that the girl did everything herself. After these words, Prince Baikal said that the unpleasant sensations inside had passed again. The only thing the prince didn't like was one thing: a crowd of people who turned to the princess and asked for compote, telling her that she was doing well. Charisse said that she specially brewed this compote to share with everyone, so you should drink it warm when your stomach hurts, but not too much. Baikal was angry that the princess was giving away the precious compote, and yet there was barely enough for him alone. As soon as the prince wanted to drink compote, Charisse came running to him and forbade him, because if he drank something cold, his stomach would hurt again. Charisse angrily asked if the prince was listening to her, but Baikal at that moment thought that the princess reminded him of a kitten with whom it was impossible to even get angry. Let's find out what the divine prince Baikal Win Castalia is. He is excellent at martial arts and magic. He is a comprehensively developed, handsome man, educated in various fields. But if we talk about his weaknesses, then these are cats. He never told anyone, but he is an ardent cat lover. That's why the princess, who reminded him of a kitten, seemed very cute. Meanwhile, the knights happily babysat Charisse and didn't mind playing with her. Prince Baikal, looking at these knights, could not believe what he was seeing. It would seem that they still call themselves court knights, while they lost their heads over someone else's daughter. They offered the princess all sorts of fun games, but Charisse rejected them all. Overall, she didn't mind all the attention. However, there was no need to rush and no need to strive to capture and analyze. Parents still can't know everything that's on their children's minds. Suddenly, Baikal finally came to his senses. He was too caught up in his thoughts, but still he turned to Sophia and told her that they needed to continue training. While the nanny was talking to the princess, Baikal thought that he still had a lot of time, so there was no need to rush. This is what training is for. As soon as the guy wanted to leave, Charisse grabbed him by the sleeve, saying that the nanny told her that he had a gift for her. She also asked me to bend over so she could say something important. Within a moment, the girl was running away from the training camp. One of the guys asked Highness what the princess told him. The guy, in bewilderment, said that the princess asked to call her Sherry. Baikal smiled, looking at the fleeing princess, thinking that this little girl never ceases to amaze him. As soon as the girls left, the guy told the knights that the break was over, which meant it was time to study. The guys, in horror, began to ask if today was the day of the fights, to which Baikal nodded and said that they had a lot of rest. It's time to make up for wasted time. Our heroine, meanwhile, happily collected all the rewards for completed tasks. After that, Charisse asked the nanny where they were going, to which the girl said in a confident tone that it was time for them to go to the 4th floor, which they talked about yesterday. It was difficult to get there, and it was impossible to enter without permission, but it was thanks to this that the vault became the most reliable place in this world. Approaching the giant painting with a portrait of Mrs. Kiena, Charisse thought and asked if it was her. Sophia leaned over the princess and said that this was Kiena as a child, or rather her mother. As soon as she touched the portrait, she said that if they pushed it slightly, they would end up in a first-rank room on the 4th floor. In fact, within a moment they were inside. Sophia showed the girl various jewelry and precious stones, of which there was a whole bunch. Only the divine prince can create such a vast space. They even say that the Southern Emperor cannot do this. In this case, our heroine wondered why he simply could not take the place of the Emperor. Is he just lazy? Charisse suddenly saw a gorgeous crown and immediately took it to try it on. She asked what it was because it suited her very well. The nanny told the girl that the divine prince had prepared this thing for Lady Kiena, but was never able to give it to her. Charisse, looking at all these decorations, could not understand why he could not give them to his sister. Although she didn't know the reasons, she was sure of one thing. The size of this tiara expresses her love for her family. It was immediately clear that the prince carefully selected each pebble. She wondered how her mother felt knowing that she had such a brother. The girl, looking at all these decorations, became immersed in thoughts about her family and just said that she wanted the same family. At that moment, the nanny told her that she could take these decorations if she liked them. Charisse, in bewilderment, said it was her mother's. Sophia Everville asked if the princess really thought that the prince would be angry if Lady Kiena's only daughter wore them. She was probably sure that Baikal would be only too happy about this. In this case, the girl said that she would take them for herself. The girl said that now it would be difficult to bring all this, so they would bring it to her in the room later, but she could wear the tiara right now. Charisse asked if she looked like a princess in it. The nanny confirmed her words, and then even added that she was the real Princess of Wynn. Sophia suggested going to other floors, because they say that in the Midnight Palace there are simply countless strange things. Our heroine was all for it. At that moment, the girl said that it seemed to her that the princess needed another maid, because she deserved the best treatment, and, moreover, she had already looked at someone. Actions are moved forward a week. Meanwhile, it was raining heavily outside the window, and Nanya fed the princess, saying that autumn was coming, and the weather was getting colder and colder. Sophia also thought that she should dress warmer today. The girl called Henna and Shami. Just a moment later, a maid from the Everville family estate, Shami, told the princess that she had prepared comfortable sheepskin shoes for her. Henna, a maid from the same estate, in turn said that she prepared these clothes, putting magic into them so as not to spoil the delicate skin. If anyone doesn't understand, these two girls are the new maids of Princess Charisse, who appeared here a week ago. Immediately after talking about the need for new maids, Sophia showed the faithful maids who had passed a strict selection in the Everville family. Shami and Henna immediately began telling the princess how much they had heard about her and how honored they were to meet her. The girl was very pleased. Suddenly, a new task was discovered. It was necessary to calm the maids so that their hearts would not beat so fast. This task was most likely also related to medicine. As a result, all sorts of tasks related to treatment appeared, but since it's for the stones, it's worth doing. The girl suddenly approached Shami and told her that she could hug her. The maid was very happy, but she was also curious about something. She looked at the princess's hand and asked what happened to it. The girl herself looked at her in bewilderment. As it turned out, it was the wound due to Alexandra that still had not healed. However, such a wound will not go away in a couple of days. In any case, she didn't bother the girl very much right now. Charisse told Shami that everything is fine. Then she thought about it. What if this is her chance to increase their interest in her? The princess suddenly said that she had somehow injured herself by accident, but the wound still hurt a little. The maid was horrified. At that moment, the girl opened the jar and, looking at Shami with the eyes of a cat, asked to anoint her, saying that this way everything would pass faster. The girls looked at each other and nodded in unison. They, of course, decided to help the princess and anoint her wound. After a while, they were chatting and laughing. The task was completed. Charisse was able to calm the two maids. Already lying in bed, our heroine thought that these girls are the kind who sometimes go a little overboard, but are very sincere and friendly. At that moment, Sophia approached the girl and told her that most likely the rain would not end soon, which means they should study for these few days. The nanny said that there are subjects that every member of the Castalia family must master. This includes history ranging from Mr. Rarehood to the current ruler. All princes and princesses first studied these books and then began their main studies. Charisse was even glad about this, because such information would help her in the game. That's why she agreed without hesitation. The nanny was delighted with the girl, or rather, with her desire to study. In this case, if they started talking about it, it would be better to start training right away. After some time, they sat in their seats. Sophia said that this subject was studied until the age of 5, and it was supposed to be taught by her maids. In their case, since the princess still hasn't done this, she will teach her everything. Pointing to the board, the girl said that this was the genealogy of the Castalia imperial family. Sophia Everville suddenly asked her student if she could show her where her name was. The girl immediately pointed to the bottom corner. The nanny was delighted that the girl found herself so quickly. After that, she said that if you look at the very top of the pedigree... Charisse didn't listen much further. At some point, the girl even thought about it. Why did she find it useful? After all, any lessons are so boring. As soon as Charisse raised her head, she jumped up and screamed within a moment. Sophia asked in bewilderment what happened. The girl pointed up and asked if she could see it. The girl still didn't understand what was going on because she didn't see anything, but our heroine was horrified by what she saw. Charisse still couldn't understand. Is she the only one who sees this cat? Sophia sighed and suggested that the student take a short break. Charisse, in turn, thought that the nanny had no idea that the cat was sitting behind her and meowing. The girl said that this shouldn't be done, so it's better to continue the lesson. Charisse decided that she should just ignore the cat. As soon as the girl told about the pedigree, she said that the recording began and then activated the prism. It was quite an amazing thing. It seems to be something like a camera for recording a lesson. Sophia began to explain the topic by saying that the empire was divided into the southern and northern parts. The northern part was ruled by the emperor for more than 100 years. He was Charisse's great-great-grandfather. Our heroine at this moment thought that he was actually more of a southern man. After that, Sophia started talking about other facts, but all of them were known to Yun Che-ri, the absolute emperor of Rarehood, who captured the heart of the dragon. After his coronation, he destroyed all his brothers and sisters. After this, only those born from the second generation, his own children, were considered his descendants, forming the current imperial family. This is how our heroine became the younger sister of the dark magician of the imperial family. This was mentioned in the training at the very beginning. 3 factions were formed based on the names of his children, Jen, Jin, and Win. They fought for power. That's all that is known for Charisse. Suddenly, with a terrible grinding sound, the girl drew a line and noted that this was a very important point. Can Emperor Rarehood continue to rule the Castalia Empire? Why was it necessary to divide a normal country into 2 parts and put another emperor at the head of the southern lands? The reason is that the emperor wanted to give his descendants an equal chance. Any member of the imperial family can try to gain power like his if they want. Thus he transferred power over southern Castalia to the rest of the family. It was from then on that the struggle for power over the southern part began. The princess had the feeling that the emperor deliberately threw bait there to strengthen himself. However, she now realized that there was no place for feelings and compassion in this game. As far as she remembered, among all the 11 contenders for the place of heir, Charisse Win was the most inconspicuous. Initially, the main character in the game is a dark magician. At that moment, the girl asked the teacher what was wrong with the members of the imperial family whose last name was not Castalia, to which Sophia told her that this was a good question. She said that after turning 15, such people are expelled from the palace according to the system of references. This news shocked the girl. This system is too terrible. It's already difficult in the palace, but they can also kick you out. Then the game will truly be over. The girl immediately tried to calm me down because exile and exile are 2 different things. They are given land and given the title of count, which has its advantages. However, pharmacist Yun Che-ri is from the real world, and Princess Charisse is in the game. Every day she became further and further from Yun Che-ri and closer to Charisse. The girl understood that she needed to return as soon as possible so as not to lose herself. There is less and less confidence that she will be able to return home at all. Her goal is too far, and she is just an orphan princess who is despised by everyone. At this very moment, the girl asked herself a very insidious question. Should she even come back? If she returns, what will she have left? Will she have the same number of friends in her life? Suddenly a notification came, and the girl immediately raised her head. Moreover, she heard a voice. Sophia Everville. At that moment, she turned to the princess and asked if she was tired, because she suddenly fell silent. The girl immediately said that she was just thinking for a while. In any case, the nanny told her that their lesson was over for today. She explained this by saying that she would like to continue, but the man behind looks at her with a stern look. Princess Charisse got out of bed in bewilderment to see who she was talking about. As it turned out, it was Prince Baikal, who stood here for quite a long time. He noticed that the princess was only focused on her lesson. Charisse began to smile and tell Dad that today she learned a lot of unusual things. At that moment, that cat jumped onto Baikal's shoulder, and the prince himself asked the girl if she had anything to do after school. Apparently, this cat is a prince. However, Charisse said that she no longer has lessons. In this case, the prince asked to follow him because he wants to show something. The girl didn't even know what she was doing now, but her worst-case scenarios were already starting to play in her head. For example, that she will now be kicked out and the game will be over. She prayed for herself and hoped that the information would be anything but one that would cause her to lose. The girl started asking her dad if he could tell where they were going. The prince thought for a moment and said that if she found out, she would be shocked, so it would be better to go and see in person. This whole situation didn't sit well with Charisse. A red light is already squealing in her head, wanting to send her home. Looking at Baikal's face, she tried to at least understand something, but judging only by his face, it was not clear what he was thinking. She remembered the moment when a window opened in front of her face and decided that that was most likely why it had appeared. Nevertheless, Sophia said that people go into exile after 15 years. But what if she gets it all wrong and just wastes the stones? All the way to the door, the girl was wondering whether or not she should buy that offer. As a result, she decided to leave it just in case. It wouldn't hurt to prepare before entering, so the girl nevertheless agreed to the offer and made the purchase. The action is moved back 30 minutes. Just at this time, a notification window appeared. The offer was to buy a ticket with a hint that could be used, and it cost only 99 stones instead of 1,000. Of course, it was strange. She couldn't understand why the ticket was so cheap, because it felt like they were selling a thing for 1 billion, but giving it away for 10 billion. But what was that note at the bottom? If she buys it and forgets, it will only be to her detriment, although this is probably what everything is designed for. At that moment, a rabbit appeared and spoke to Charisse, telling her that she was obsessed with discounts. The bigger the discount, the bigger the debt in the end. Charisse was at a loss. As a result, she completely felt like a slave forever. She was afraid that when buying a stock, something might become something like this. At this moment, Sophia, as it happened last time, woke the girl up from her thoughts. As a result, due to the closed message, notifications flashed before my eyes all the time. She still has clues, so she won't get kicked out and she's ready for anything. Charisse was prepared for the worst events, but she didn't even think about something good. As a result, a bunch of gifts were waiting for her in the room. Judging by the princess's look, Prince Baikal assumed that she liked it. The girl asked in bewilderment what this was all about. The guy said that all this was a gift for her. Charisse asked again in bewilderment. Is this whole room really a gift? Charisse asked why there were words about not being disappointed, to which the prince told her that he wanted to make the room even more magnificent. But everyone was against it. Many people said that a children's room should be age-appropriate. However, he tried to do everything possible and also as safely as possible. After that, the girl asked what about the prince's words about shock. Baikal laughed and said that she was small and weak. He was afraid that she would see the gift and fall in surprise. In the same room, Charisse, with tears in her eyes, began to ask herself why she bought some suspicious item, although she didn't even know what it was for. The prince looked in bewilderment at Charisse, who was lying on the floor and crying, either from happiness or from grief. He asked her if it was worth exchanging it for another gift. The girl suddenly calmed down and looked around. After all, the divine prince had specially prepared this room for her. She was worried about the tips that she had bought in vain. She didn't even pay attention to all the beauty. She apologized and said that she really liked the gift. In any case, it doesn't matter if she bought these tips and bought them because the prince gave her such a beautiful room right now. He also carefully selected gifts and decorated the playroom. This was the first time this happened to her. In this whole situation, one thing was certain. His Highness cares about her. Approaching Dad, she began to say that she was receiving such a gift for the first time in her life. Prince Baikal smiled and said that he was glad that she liked it. No wonder he tried so hard that he even called Sustain. The girl didn't understand a little what we were talking about. Although, from her memory, Sophia Everville said something about them. Suddenly she remembered. It is one of the 5 great duchies. They are also called Sustain Builders. The prince also said that not only they were there, but also Terran artists, Origin sculptors. All of them helped decorate this room and choose toys. The girl didn't even know how to thank the prince for such a gift, so she asked him to accept her big bow, the dragon's way of greeting. Even if there was an unresolved issue, she could not understand why the prince cared so much about her, because she was not even his own daughter. The guy sat down next to her and said that she shouldn't thank him. She fully deserves it all and can use it. After that, the prince told her that she could go play in her new room, and he would watch from here. This arrangement suited our heroine. Moreover, I would like this to last as long as possible. At that moment, she decided that if nothing could be done about the tips, and she bought them, then she should use them to the fullest. You just have to be careful not to catch the prince's eye. The girl asked herself in bewilderment what she could play with, because there were so many toys. She decided that the best option would be to pretend that she was drawing. Sitting down over the sheet, she said loudly that perhaps she would draw here. Within a moment, she again confirmed the activation of the prompts. You were given 30 seconds to watch it. Deciding that she had time to remember everything before and could do it now, Charisse activated all the hints. Within a moment, out of 10 clues, 9 remained. After another couple of seconds, the first clue appeared. The hint said that if she loses, she will start all over again, and the stones will become invalid. But the special items stored in the user's chest will remain. Our heroine immediately thought about this chest. To activate the treasure chest, 5,000 gems were required. Charisse knew that if this item was connected to the system, then it meant the product from Dragon Street. This is a place where all kinds of rarities and magical items are sold, but the items from there are very expensive, considering that the entrance fee is as much as 1,000 stones. Previously, when she played, because it was very expensive, she didn't even go there a couple of times. However, it is useful to know about this in case of an unexpected game ending. Deciding that this was a pretty good hint, the girl clicked on the hint again. It was said for fines if there is debt. It was strange because they had already talked about it. She clicked on the prompt again, hoping to get something useful. Do only 1 or 2 clues contain important information? The next clue was the words about succession to the throne. To become an heir, it was necessary to receive achievements, as well as information about repaying the debt. Following this, they talked about rewards for quests depending on their type, for example, an unexpected quest from 1 to 10 million stones, and also more valuable rewards. This was already more useful. She immediately thought about where she could buy additional episodes. Deciding to save clues, she wanted to find a way to start the achievement quest. At that moment, Baikal approached the girl, who said in surprise that she didn't seem to like drawing. Charisse jumped in surprise. Looking at the empty sheet of paper, he said that he hoped to see at least something there, but it was empty. The princess said that she liked it. The prince replied that it is not necessary to do what you don't want. Charisse shouted and said that this was not so, because she just wanted to draw Dad but did not know how. Baikal, in bewilderment, asked if she was talking about him. The princess nodded and added that Dad was too handsome, so she didn't know how to draw. Turning around, the guy said that you can't quickly finish what you start when it comes to art. It's worth thinking about and drawing more. Looking at the departing prince, our heroine thought that he would ask her what she was doing while she was pretending to draw. But fortunately, she was lucky. After some time, Baikal sat and read a book. Unexpectedly, Charisse came up to him and called him. The guy asked in bewilderment what happened. Has she really played enough and finished drawing? The girl shook her head and said that it was not so. Sitting down next to Dad, she said that she had heard about the imminent return of the twins. What if they don't like her? The prince, perplexed, asked her why she thought so. The girl said that she didn't think so, that they wouldn't really like her. To herself, she thought that this was true, because for them she was a suddenly appearing sister. All she knows about them is that they are the twin sons of His Highness. It says he's a smart guy and as perceptive as a fox, so you shouldn't lie or hide anything from him. But Gurgis, in turn, is very strong and honest, like a bear, so you shouldn't expect hypocritical words from him. Our heroine thought to herself that Gurgis was naive, so it would be enough to just be nice to him. But then the whole problem is Idzis. Even when playing, he shows his ingenuity. At this moment, the prince decided to reassure his unborn daughter and said that his sons were not so childish as to be at enmity with their younger sister, so she could be calm. Feeling the warm words and care of Baikal, Charisse assumed that such a person is called a father. If he feels that way about her, then he might actually adopt her. She thought about what would happen if she just asked about it. It would also be great if he said he would adopt her right at the party. Unexpectedly, Prince Baikal turned to Sherry and asked her opinion on what a father should be like. Recalling her past, Yoon Chae-ri could only emphasize the smell of antiseptic and the sound of a pacemaker. That's almost all she remembered about her father. Nevertheless, she has memories where he somehow smiled kindly, but she was sure that it was too long ago. The girl suddenly told Baikal that her father should braid her hair. Sit on your lap and braid them beautifully. The prince wrote this down and asked what else needed to be done. Charisse was thoughtful and didn't know what to say. It was difficult to squeeze out any requests. She suddenly said that Dad should go shopping and to theme parks with her. The prince immediately thought about it because he was surprised that his father should know so much, but he still didn't know much. Charisse was surprised that he was thinking about it so seriously. Unexpectedly, the girl said the most important thing that a father should do. He should always be on her side no matter what she does. The prince asked again, a little perplexed. The princess said that if, for example, she does something wrong, then she should not be driven into a corner. A good father must love, appreciate, and treat his children well. In this case, if he is on the side of our heroine, everything will be much easier. At that moment, the prince told Sherry that she was worrying in vain, because everything the princess did was right. No one dares to say that she is wrong. The girl immediately asked what if she constantly meets bad people, for example, like Alexandra. Turning around, Charisse saw an angry prince who had already imagined that someone had offended his daughter and was ready to destroy him. Finally exhaling, the prince continued to braid his hair and tell Charisse that this would never happen. The princess suddenly noticed that her hair was braided. Baikal told her that she herself asked her to braid her hair. Immediately after this, he turned to Sherry and told her that there was nothing in the empire that she could not have. He doesn't know many things, but he can build the same park and take her there. Our heroine was too moved by all these words. She didn't know what protecting her own father was. That is why her father's love felt much warmer than she could have imagined. Hugging Baikal, she said that she liked her hairstyle. After some time, His Highness was reading a book, and our heroine was sleeping on him. At that moment, someone began to call the prince. It was Solip who asked the prince to look at these documents. Baikal, in bewilderment, told the guy not to shout so much because he might wake up Charisse. The prince, in bewilderment, asked the assistant if he was really suggesting that he put the child, who had fallen asleep from crying, down and get to work. Solip. He said that's not what he meant. Then he suddenly asked if he really liked reading books that much. Baikal replied that he does this not out of interest, but in order to learn. For example, he had already read that a child falls asleep when his father hugs him. The man thought a little, is this really necessary? He asked what the book was called. He noticed the cover and saw that the book was called They Say She's the Devil's Favorite Daughter. This is not an education book, but fiction. At that moment, the prince said that be that as it may, if the matter is urgent, then it is better to just leave the documents, and he will come back later and take care of it. Then he looked at the princess and noticed that she was waking up. The girl said that she just heard her father's voice and woke up. She suddenly asked why it wasn't working. The prince immediately said that he had a lot of things to do, so he would go. The prince's assistant was happy to hear these words, so he supported him. And yet the fact that Princess Charisse appeared with them is real happiness. Looking at the girl, Hyokijin Jackal Solip said that thanks to her, His Highness softened, but Charisse is very good. It was as if a flower had blossomed in their palace. Our heroine accepted these words with doubt, because she had not done anything outstanding. Then doesn't this smack of flattery? The prince at that moment asked Solip why he was not busy with work. They should go to the office instead of talking idle talk. The prince's assistant said that he would go now, when suddenly he noticed Baikal's smile, which was a real rarity. He asked him what was wrong, to which the prince replied that everything was fine. Solip smiled because he understood that the prince was pretending, but he actually liked the princess's praise. Prince Baikal eventually asked how the adoption process was going. Solip replied that everything was going smoothly. As soon as the two princes return, they will hold an adoption party. The guy immediately asked if there was any news about when they would arrive, because they passed their exams ahead of schedule and left. Solip didn't know, but he was sure that they wouldn't get into trouble. After this, the man said that Sophia needed magic in order to make the plum blossom. It's all because of the princess's Ursula medicine. Baikal asked to tell the girl that this is a good idea, so he will do it. If the poster is made, all external affairs will be over. Solip smiled and said that this was entrusted to a trusted service. By tomorrow morning, there will be rumors on the streets. Already in the morning, all the people were perplexed. They could not believe that His Highness had made such a decision. As it turned out, it was already clear to everyone that His Majesty Prince Baikal adopted Princess Charisse Win Castalia. All the people were whispering among themselves and did not understand how a girl who could not talk and just existed could achieve this. Apparently His Highness simply took pity on the girl, which is why he adopted her. Another woman said that there was a rumor coming from the palace that the princess was not really blessed. She actually received the dragon's blessing. Also, she is smart enough to make medicine out of poison at that age. It looks like the girl was hiding it to save her life. The girl suddenly asked if there was a Gen faction, the head of the imperial family. A friend said that it was so, but Alexandra received a punishment. In that case, now that His Highness the Prince has returned, things may soon change. When Princess Charisse comes of age, she could be a strong candidate for the throne. Meanwhile, our heroine was doing earthworks and hiccuping. She immediately began to think that they were talking about her. At that moment, a man approached the girl, telling the lady princess that she was covered in dirt. This was the first time he had seen a member of the royal family who loved gardening so much. Looking at the basket, he asked if she had taken everything. Charisse nodded and said that there are many medicinal herbs growing in the palace. For example, the central side gardens were created with decorative flowers for aesthetics, but he easily found what he needed: trees and medicinal herbs. In any case, the girl understood that this was more harvest than expected. As soon as any task with medicine appears, she will immediately complete it. There are golden flowers that relieve inflammation. There is loksha that removes phlegm. Herbs and flowers used in the treatment of wounds grow in the greenhouse, and so on. The princess was in a very good mood. Nevertheless, the old man asked the girl to be careful. He said that there are a lot of useful things in the palace, but pests or snakes can crawl inside and hide in the grass. Of course, everything can be healed, but it would be better not to see this. The girl agreed with this without a doubt, but she was interested in what the level of medicine was in this world. During the game, she did not need to see a doctor and never received treatment here. However, things are different with commoners. They are not as strong as members of the imperial family and can get hurt while working. If they get hurt and leave it just like that, real trouble could happen. The girl asked the old man how he treated his wounds. He told her that he usually goes to the medical office in the palace. The palace servants use simple medicines from the medical office. The girl asked what happened to those who did not live in the palace. The man said that they usually go to the temple, so perhaps the people are all there. Medicines are sold at the Gafnus temple. Goddess of faith and love, Gafnius. Among the gods of the Castalia religion, she is the main, most symbolic goddess. Of course, in connection with this, the status of her temple is also high. She is called the only force capable of resisting the imperial family. Charisse learned for the first time that they even sell medicine in the temple. She asked what the price was. The man scratched his head a little and said that as far as he remembers, the medicine costs about 10,000 gold there. The girl couldn't believe what she heard. How expensive is that? A rich family of 4 can live on this for a month. Then the princess asked what about the doctors. The man said that it would be good to see them, but the situation is not so good. There were fewer doctors than priests. You won't even be able to see a doctor if you don't wait a certain amount of time. Charisse asked what the wait might be like. The man answered her that the situation in each temple is different, but you need to be prepared to wait up to 1 year. It was too incredible. Our heroine immediately became thoughtful. What to do if the disease gets worse and there is no time left? Time is life. She was passionate about imagining the number of people who are dying here, wasting time. The girl suddenly asked if it was possible to meet with the doctor quickly. Does everyone have to wait? The man said that there is still one way. Of course, this is a way in which you need to donate a large amount of money and move forward in the queue for treatment. It turns out that the situation here was exactly the same as in life. Exactly the same people who are looking for profit. As a result, the order here is determined not by urgency or recording, but by ordinary money. Charisse was shocked. Those who have money receive treatment, and those who do not, after a long wait, eventually die. In the game, Yoon Chae-ri once played a mission about an old woman named Baba. She said that where she treated people, there were no medicinal herbs. Because of this, there was a commotion. The old woman turned into a heroine and said that if she helps their village, then Baba will gladly become her spy. It was a short quest, which is why the task sounded so simple. She began to carry it out, and it seemed to her that a man named Baba was replacing the doctor on all issues. Because there are doctors in this world, but only those who have received a license can treat. In that case, even if everyone was silent about it, Baba's existence would be illegal. Walking along the road, the girl didn't even know what to do. It is right that only licensed professionals can treat people. However, what if people do not know whether they will be able to get to a doctor, even if they diligently collect money? You can't blame them for looking for alternative treatments. What then will happen if ordinary people are given access to medicine? If she had thought about this question earlier, she would not have wasted her energy on petty tasks. The man, while rubbing an apple, noticed that the princess was interested in the difficulties of those in need. He asked her not to worry too much, because they have the goddess Gafnias, who reaps evil. The goddess will have mercy on the princess if she prays and strengthens her faith during her illness. Charisse smiled sweetly at her grandfather, but she understood that if people were treated properly, they would be able to survive even without the grace of the goddess. Sitting on a pebble, the girl thought that there was still a lot to be done. But where best to start? That's what interested her. One thing was certain. There are two pressing problems in this country. The first is the low access of common people to medicine, and the second is the low level of knowledge about medicine. What if, in all this situation, you recklessly decide to start working as a pharmacist? It was obvious that panic would begin, because a member of the imperial dynasty would never do this. Overall, this is a fantasy game, so there's nothing you can do about this style. This is how it was in the Middle Ages. The tips mentioned 3 types of tasks: hidden, unexpected, and achievements. She hasn't tried to complete the achievements yet, but there will probably be tasks important for the scenario. The princess did not know when the plot of the tasks would go beyond the palace. In any case, it was necessary to increase the availability of medicine so that commoners would not be burdened. Suddenly, a strange boy approached the girl and began to be rude to her. He called her stupid and asked why she was sitting with such an arrogant face. Charisse decided not to leave the image of the character, so after taking a bite of an apple, he asked the guy who he was in bewilderment. The guy was angry because he was ignored. He told the girl to listen to him carefully because he was a universally recognized prince. This is Ashgen Castalia. Our heroine could not understand what this guy was talking about. Apparently he was from an expansion since Yoon Che-ri never saw him in the main game. Moreover, she could not understand what was so outstanding about this guy. In addition, it was interesting why he brazenly showed up at her house and started a quarrel. This annoyed her, so there was one way to avoid Ash. But she had already seen the whole plot. As soon as she escapes from there, Ash will start spreading rumors throughout the palace saying that Princess Charisse is nasty. That's why Charisse didn't want to run away. Having the pride of the Wynn family, she decided that she would teach this child some manners. Ash laughed and told the girl that if she was scared, then she should tell her that she was very scared and that she was wrong. Otherwise, his dragon heart will teach her manners. Suddenly there was a roar. A moment later, the guy was sitting on the ground and didn't understand what was happening. The princess looked intently into the eyes of the offender and asked which of them was scared. The guy screamed and said that he was not going to listen to something like that from a little girl. The princess kicked the ground again and began to tell the guy to immediately apologize for his words, because he had insulted her mother. At this moment, Ash's previously confident face changed to fear, due to the fact that he saw something terrible in front of him. Standing in front of him was a princess who was engulfed in an incredibly powerful aura. What happened to the personality of the blissful, stupid girl? The guy shouted sharply and said that if she did something to him, Alexandra would not leave anything as it was. Ash then told the princess that she was just a joke for Alexandra. Our heroine could not restrain herself and began to laugh. Of course, now this was not entirely true. Before His Highness took her, everything was like this, but now everything has changed. Charisse suddenly asked the guy if he had heard of the red medicine. Ash, not understanding what she was talking about, asked her again. This medicine is bright red in color and will drive a person crazy if dropped on a wound. The girl said that she would hurt the guy and then pour this medicine on him. Ash, in horror, asked our heroine if it was true that she was now threatening him. The girl smiled and said that everything was so. As soon as she sat down next to him, she immediately told him not to see him here again, because this was her garden. Otherwise, everything will be like in the story. Ash jumped up from the ground and said that they would still see who would be defeated. Finally stretching out, the princess decided that the guy had learned his lesson, and from now on would not be so dismissive of the Wynn family. Now it would be worth telling about this guy. The action moves back some time. One of the guys poked the guy sitting next to him and asked him to look down. It was clear that Jen was pestering people again, but they could not understand who he was pestering. Idzis suddenly said that most likely this is Charisse's cousin. At that moment he said that the girl looked rather weak, so they should help before she was injured. Just at that moment, the princess kicked the offender to the ground. The brothers Idzis and Gergis, sitting on the tree, laughed and said that their sister is better than she seems. Gorgis, I asked my brother if he was really going to intervene. Besides, he doesn't want his father to know that they are hiding here. Idzis replied that this child made medicine from Ursulum, and she also has abilities, so if they take her to her grandfather, she will definitely help. Gergis asked if his brother meant that the girl would help cure his grandfather. Idzis said they could earn extra points, and if not, she wouldn't be scolded. Gergis, in this case, he looked towards the girl and said that she had just driven away the little freak Jen. Idzis looking at the crybaby, he said that this was not enough. The guy needs to pay for mocking the Wynn faction. Ash, meanwhile, ran home very angry. He knew that as soon as Alexandra appeared, that girl wouldn't dare to blather. He will definitely repay her later. The guy didn't know for himself that as soon as they met again, he would definitely... He didn't have time to finish his thought, because some voice asked where he was going. Turning back, Ash realized that standing in front of him was Gergis, who was not particularly friendly. The guy was horrified by Gergis' energy, so he decided not to quarrel. Ash smiled and said that it was a misunderstanding. He was just passing by their territory. Suddenly, Idzis appeared behind the guy and asked in a whisper what the misunderstanding was, because they saw everything that Ash Jen was doing here. The guy saw the second gentleman and jumped away in horror. He thought that they were at the academy. Gergis immediately told him that he didn't need to know this. Ash realized that he was in real trouble. Gergis may be scary, but if you compare it, it would be better to get punched by him a couple of times. But Idzis... It was at this moment that he asked Ash Jen Castalia if he had any excuses and why they treated him this way. However, Idzis did not believe that the boy had enough brains to figure it out. The guy understands that there is no other way out. He fell to the ground and began to beg for forgiveness. Ash said that he didn't know that Gergis and Idzis were at home, so he won't do this again in the future. The brothers laughed and asked what they would do. Idzis said without stopping that they would be lenient, but only this time. Deciding that the danger had passed, Ash began to rise from the ground, saying that he would go home. Suddenly, a perplexed Idzis began to approach him, who asked if he understood correctly that Ash did not know that Gergis and Idzis were here. The guy said that it was so. Idzis, I cracked my fingers and decided that, in this case, if they weren't there, the guy would continue to insult Wynn. Idzis wasn't going to leave it that easy. The action moves to the palace. Baikal asked his daughter if she scolded Ash. The girl nodded and said that he insulted her mother. The prince braided the girl's hair and told her that she was doing well. Jen's children were growing up without manners. The prince also conveyed the thanks that Solip asked to convey. Charisse smiled at her dad and said that if that boy came here again, she would send him away. To herself, she thought that His Highness braids his hair well. The prince said that this was correct, and a moment later he said that her hair was ready. He asked if she would go play now. Charisse nodded her head. After the question, our village looked at the table and saw documents, the volume of which was Sirius. While she is playing, His Highness and his assistants are doing this. Looking at the assistants, she noticed that their faces looked very tired. They can't even compare to the knights of the training ground. Suddenly, Charisse said that today she wants to watch her dad. Helping relieve people's fatigue like the knights could give her extra points. Looking at the prince's assistants, the girl said that she was very sorry for them and that she wanted to make something similar to Ursulum tea. People with tears in their eyes surrounded the girl with affection and care, saying that she was very sensitive, but it was better to just sit down and watch comfortably. Our heroine smiled at them and thanked them. She immediately began to think about what medicine would be suitable for the assistants. At that moment, the girl noticed the same cat. Again, according to assumptions, it was His Highness's cat. Deciding that she would ask Dad directly, she began to diligently draw something on paper. Suddenly, our heroine remembered the very rabbit who got her into debt. This no doubt bothered her. After some time, the prince exhaled heavily and thought that he was finally almost done with everything. Behind him stood Princess Charisse, who turned to Dad and called him to look at the drawings. Handing over the sheets, Charisse said that she wanted to ask something. Of course, she wanted to know who this cat was. As soon as the guy saw the drawing of a cat, which he himself could not confuse with anything, his face changed. The guy looked up at his daughter and asked if she had seen this cat in the office. Our heroine was surprised by her father's reaction. Was she really not allowed to see this? But she clearly saw the cat, so it's definitely not a lie. The girl told Prince Baikal that she had definitely seen this cat. The guy thought for a bit. A moment later, he snapped his fingers and it was as if the same cat came out of a portal, which seriously frightened Charisse. The prince said that he was a little surprised, because usually people cannot see other people's familiars. Taking this cat in his arms, he said that she was his familiar, and her name was Mule. Our heroine immediately understood. The reason why this cat often appeared was because His Highness was nearby. The princess asked why, in this case, she sees the cat, but others cannot. Baikal explained that others should not see her, but the fact that she sees is strange. To see a familiar, innate conditions are necessary. You must at least have the strength of a half-dragon. This power is exactly what is allowed only to the strongest of the imperial family. This is what is called a familiar. Looking at her hands, our heroine thought, what strength can we talk about a half-dragon if it is the weakest of the weakest? Why can she see her familiar? At that moment, Baikal turned to his daughter and told her not to think about it. She is a special princess who has received the dragon's blessings, so she is worthy of being chosen as a familiar. For example, Gurgis and Idzis also have familiars, so you can ask them to show them to her later. Charisse suddenly remembered that she had heard about this. When she was born, she had a familiar, but he later became disillusioned and ran away. Charisse was blessed in the past, so she did not recognize her familiar, but as it turns out, His Highness fortunately does not think so. At this moment, our heroine thought and asked, who then is the rabbit she saw on the first day? Suddenly, a rather interesting thought came to the girl. She immediately ran up to Dad and asked if he happened to know what kind of familiar His Majesty the Emperor had. The prince said that he had never seen him either, because the Emperor was hiding him from prying eyes. If you think about it this way, then the master of the familiar is so powerful that he was able to drag her into this world. No one comes to mind other than Emperor Rarehood. But what to do then if the rabbit really is the Emperor's familiar? Should she ask if she was brought here by accident? Suddenly, the girl decided that this couldn't happen, because in the first place it was a character from the game. Suddenly there was a loud noise behind the girl. Charisse, in bewilderment, asked Shami what happened, to which the girl immediately began to apologize, saying that she had broken the teapot. The princess exhaled heavily because she was very scared. She thought something serious had happened. The maid said that she would clean everything right away. As soon as Shami reached out to remove the fragments, the princess saw strange spots on the girl's hands and immediately asked what they were. The girl said that yesterday she was polishing antique candlesticks along with other maids. Apparently, this is why she developed a rash. Our heroine, putting two and two together, realized that if this is connected with antique candlesticks, then it's all due to an allergic reaction to metal. This is an allergy caused by touching metal containing nickel. It burns and is also very itchy. In any case, Shami asked not to pay attention to this. Our heroine knew for sure that she was itching. It would be nice for her to find an antihistamine, but she, and indeed in this world in general, simply did not have one. Princess Charisse, at that moment, remembered that there was a medicine that she and Henna used to smear Charisse's hands. Our heroine immediately decided that she would quickly run away and bring this ointment, but her father stopped her and asked Sherry to calm down a little. It was impossible to give away things of the imperial family just like that, especially if it was a gift from the temple, blessed by the high priestess. Looking at Shami, our heroine asked in bewilderment what about her, because the ointment can help a lot and thanks to it she can quickly recover. The maid once again said that she was really fine and that she also had good medicine. At that moment she decided to demonstrate this ointment and took it out of her pocket. She didn't look the best. Charisse was horrified and could not understand what this smell was, because even the smell of rot was better. In what century was this ointment made? This is exactly the question the servant girl asked. When did she even buy this ointment? The girl looked at her and thought. In fact, she no longer remembered the exact date. It was about 10 years ago when she first joined the Everville family. She decided to buy it because it is high quality and has a high poppy content. Our heroine was incredibly terrified. Medicines have an expiration date. Although probably this did not apply to them, because such a concept did not even exist. But nevertheless, the poppy was also a big problem. This is a plant that has very beautiful flowers, but it is often used for completely different purposes. Illegal drugs are made from milk of poppy seeds. Magician is the raw material for the production of a highly addictive product. Is milk of the poppy really applied to wounds here? Taking a deep breath, Charisse decided that she needed to calm down. In the past, Magus was also used as medicine. Because of its intoxicating effect, it was also more sedating. Nevertheless, it is better to make medicines from safer calendula. She heard that this flower is also in the greenhouse of this palace. But be that as it may, it was impossible to constantly use poppy ointment. That's why the girl asked the maid to throw away this ointment. This was due to the fact that she had been using it for a long time. Shami asked in surprise if the medicine doesn't get better if you use it for a long time, because her mother told her so. Our heroine grabbed her head in horror and said that this was not so. How should she begin to fight people's ignorance of medicine? Just at this moment, a new episode appeared before Charisse. It was supposed to help with medical development, but it cost 999 crystals. The prince also approached the girl and told her not to worry about the maid. He will convey the order to the medical department to give her the best solution. Suddenly, Shami screamed in horror and asked if she really couldn't clean up anymore. She asked not to remove her from her position as the princess's servant. Looking at the maid, Prince Baikal asked if she was going to break the kettle next to the child again. He still advised her to take a break so as not to make a mistake again. In this case, sad Shami left and said that she would try to recover as quickly as possible and return to work. Then the prince advised Sherry to go play too. The girl said that she would like to stay here longer because she wanted to come up with a recipe for energy supplements while watching the work. Baikal told her that it was too noisy here. After that, he also added that they would have to do other things, which means she might become too bored. With a heavy sigh, Charisse agreed. Already on the other side of the door, she was thinking about when this strange proposal would disappear, in which it was as if she were going to be robbed of 1,000 stones. She knew that they wouldn't be able to fool her on such an important episode, saying that if they cut the price a little, she would agree to buy. But she never did. A moment later, a discount offer appeared. Now entry cost as much as 998 crystals, instead of 999. The princess was shocked by the impudence, and began to run away from this window. After that, discounts came again and again. The girl decided that someone above also urgently needed this. Why are they trying to sell this thing for so much? As a result, the final discount was 900 crystals. In our village, she decided that she was still generous, so she would look at this episode. Having signed up for this, the girl knew exactly what she was doing for the sake of Shami, who suffered from poor medicine. Within a moment, the girl's face was in incredible horror. An achievement quest has appeared. A new ointment had to be made and given to Shami, as well as to the other 92,824 people. Exactly the number of people who used the ointment, the effect of which was minimal. The reward for each task was 100 million crystals, and the deadline was 2160 hours. The princess immediately became thoughtful. She will need 3 months. She needs 3 months to search the whole country, find people using poppy ointment and replace it with a new one. The action is postponed to the next day. All night our heroine was thinking about what to do. She could make calendula ointment only by putting calendula in oil. Calendula has been used as a medicine to treat blisters or affected areas of the skin and is ideal for making an ointment. The only problem was that it would take a month to make the oil. It also took time to get the medicine, and the medicine itself needs to be replaced with a new one for 93,000 people. There was too little time. Is it even possible for a 4-year-old child to find 93,000 people in the remaining 2 months? Of course this was impossible. At that moment, Sophia came into the room, who was surprised that the princess got up so early. The nanny immediately said that the food was prepared, so she came. It was time to go eat. Charisse knew that if she did nothing, the game would simply end. Suddenly the girl sighed and said that nothing could be done. Hearing this, Sophia asked the princess if she was really worried about Shami. The girl, after a second of thought, said that it was so. The girl asked not to worry about her because, thanks to His Highness, she was prescribed the best treatment. Then she smiled and said that as soon as Charisse is ready, they will choose a beautiful dress because very important people will arrive today, namely the princess's 2 older brothers. After some time, all the people were gathered in the main hall of the palace. Charisse, in bewilderment, asked the nanny if she looked strange. A moment later, everyone was notified that the princes had finally returned, so they could greet them. Immediately after these words, two brothers stepped onto the path, heading to their father. As soon as they approached, they immediately joyfully greeted their father. Baikal told them that they both got there well. Although they were notified in advance by letter, it was better to formally introduce them. Baikal called Sherry and asked her to say hello to her older brothers. He immediately began to greet her sweetly, saying that they were her older brothers. Gurgis, in turn, looked at her silently. Charisse decided that she needed to look as cute as possible, so she would show herself as cute and make them her allies. The girl greeted them and said that she was their dear sister. Gurgis, I was certainly amazed by these words. Idzis, in turn, laughed. Is there really something wrong with your sister? Approaching her, the guy told her that, apparently, she connected her cute features because she included these actions in her calculations. Our heroine was shocked. As she expected, Idzis is still that fox. In such a short time, he noticed that she was deliberately acting cute. After that, the guy laughed and said he was joking. He immediately realized that she was definitely his little sister and began to stroke her head. Gurgis asked his brother what he was doing with the child. Baikal told his sons that even though they had just returned, it would be good if they played with her. Charisse needs time to get close to them. Idzis, I told my father not to worry. They realized that he decided to adopt her, so they would take responsibility and take care of their sister. After they finished with the greeting, Idzis invited the guys to go with him to the secret base. Charisse didn't understand what he was talking about, so she asked what secret base he was talking about. The guy was surprised that she didn't know about her. They have a secret base that adults don't know about. This can be considered a kind of refuge. Idzis, I asked if my sister would be curious with them. Of course, the girl was very interested. Taking her hand, he said that this is not a place where you can bring anyone. Then he said that they were leaving. A moment later, the guys were in a strange place, thanks to the fact that the brothers used their magic. After some more time, they found themselves in a tree house from which bright flashes could be seen. Charisse was inside. She couldn't come to her senses for some time because her head was too dizzy. Idzis unexpectedly apologized for saying such things as soon as they arrived, but they actually brought her here because they wanted to ask her something. They heard that she made a medicine from Ursulum. Thanks to this medicine, my father's indigestion went away and it helped relieve the night's fatigue. That's why, because of Grandpa's poor condition, the guys wanted to secretly ask Charisse for something. Our heroine thought that if we are talking about rarehood, then we can remember that it is more than 200 years old. Maybe it has already had enough. At that moment, Idzis tapped the table and said that he understands that the sister is smart, so they want a deal. They knew that the sister still had many enemies in the Imperial Palace. They knew at least 2 for sure. For example, Alexandra, who couldn't stand her, and Ash, with whom they now have differences. Moreover, the guys, looking at the girl, said that for most of the Gen faction, she is a thorn in the side. The guy said that it would be very disadvantageous for her to be surrounded by them alone, but if they were there, it would be a completely different conversation. Idzis asked her to help them with her grandfather's problem, and in this case they would help her. If she has any problems in the future, they will solve them. She will have weapons in the form of them on both sides. The guys finally asked if she agreed. Our heroine thought, if this is a task, then the system itself will help with treatment, so it will not be so difficult. It's not as hard as the achievement task. The beneficent granddaughter who cured the illness of the Rarehood Emperor is the best way to gain a position in the palace. At that moment, Gurgis put his hand on his sister's head and said that she did not need to agree against her will, so it was stupid to say anything to a child who could not cure the disease. Then he laughed and said that even though Idzis is his twin, he is the guy who can suck everything out of you. The guy asked in bewilderment when this happened. In any case, Gurgis again told his sister that she could refuse. They are not so bad as to spread rot on their sister because she did not agree. As expected, Gurgis is the embodiment of justice. If he takes her side, she will also need to be more active. The princess turned to Brother Idzis and asked what exactly was hurting her grandfather. The guy thought about it and said that he hadn't seen it himself, so he didn't know everything for sure, but he had red spots all over his body, itching and burning. He also has pain and is dizzy. It wasn't indigestion, but there was also something wrong with his stomach. Charisse began to list. Itching, rash, headaches, and dizziness. She seemed to know what it was. It seemed like these were symptoms of a typical allergy. The girl asked her brothers if grandfather had tried something like holy water, which cures any disease. Idzis shook his head and said it was useless. In this case, the medicine that ordinary people use will not work if they do not know what an allergy is. This information is also known to the twins. If this is an acute allergic reaction, then the most important thing is to find out what caused it. She immediately cut off all nonsense and finally came to the obvious. Food allergies? The girl asked her brothers if they knew what grandfather had eaten in recent days. Idzis replied that the secretaries may have recorded, but they do not show it to anyone. If there is a leak of information, then something unpleasant could happen. Charisse eventually decided that she was right. Something got into the emperor's mouth. However, if it was indeed a food allergy, his diet would need to be checked. Idzis, he said that if this is absolutely necessary, then there is one way. At the bottom of the Cintaburi, he will bribe his grandfather's secretary and ask. Charisse didn't immediately understand what they were talking about, but after a while she remembered that Rarehood is a fan of collecting things, who collects everything, even if he doesn't use it. That is why people who want to attract the Emperor Collector collect all sorts of rarities all year long, waiting for this day when they can see the Emperor, despite his status. Idzis reminded that this day comes after the Harvest Festival, in a month. There is almost a festive atmosphere on this day, so everyone is relaxed. Our heroine suddenly thought about how much time it took to complete the creation of the calendula ointment. 1 month. In this case, if she has a month, she will have time to make the ointment, and if it is useful for the Emperor, he will take it. She wants to give this ointment to the common people for free. People will definitely take the bait, and this is a great opportunity for the Imperial Palace to boost its reputation. The new medicine, tested by the Emperor, will spread among people as if on wings. Naturally, this will become a replacement for poppy ointment for people. This is how she will be able to complete her tasks in one fell swoop. Cintaburi Day, on this day her chance will appear. Idzis. I looked at my sister in bewilderment and asked what happened, because she had been silent for a long time. The girl said everything was fine. Then she thought again. How serious is the Emperor's allergy? The stronger it is, the faster it was necessary to take action. Even if a 4-year-old girl said that she could cure the Emperor, no one would believe her. It turns out that the only thing she could do was wait for the day of the Synthestorm. At this moment, Idzis said in surprise that he thought that his sister would refuse at least once, but he was touched that she agreed so easily. The guy said that as a sign of gratitude he would give her anything. The girl was no less surprised. After a moment, she said that she had one thing that she wanted. While drinking tea, Idzis asked what it was. The princess thought to herself that if they were talking about what she wanted right now, then there was nothing more than that. The action moves to the kitchen. Nanya Lindensky asked the girl in bewilderment if she needed oil. Charisse replied that she needed enough to fill a whole container. Nanya laughed and decided that most likely the princess was going to prepare some kind of miracle cure again. Everyone in the kitchen was already drinking the remaining plum tea that our heroine made. If you work in the kitchen, you taste a lot of spices, and it's easy to get bloated. It wasn't anything special, but it's good that it helped. She was glad that everyone liked it. Looking at the princess, who was trying to take the container, the woman said that it was too heavy, so she would bring it herself. The girl asked to bring her to the backyard. The woman smiled and said that she should wait in the yard. Charisse didn't argue with her. She went outside almost immediately. Fortunately, the weather was very good. She was sure that in such weather the oil would cook well, and she also decided to go and pick calendula flowers. Taking one of the flowers in her hands, the girl wondered whether it would be big enough or, on the contrary, small. At that moment, the girl was called by Grandfather Tomby, who was standing with a whole basket of these flowers. After this, the screams of the crowd from behind began to be heard. Meanwhile, they also collected flowers and said that their flowers were much better. The old man was furious, and behind you that these guys were messing around. Do they really want to become palace gardeners that badly? In bewilderment, they began to say that this was cruel because they wanted to repay the debt for Charisse. She did good for them, and they do the same in return. Despite these conversations, Tomby sent all the guys to work and then apologized to the princess. The man said that perhaps they wanted to help because of His Highness. Charisse replied that everything was fine because she was close to His Highness. The man said that even though they work for His Highness, they are just commoners. Other members of the royal family look up to them. But His Highness never oppressed them because of their status. The royal family has no such people except His Highness Prince Baikal. Charisse realized that all this was in gratitude for having received the favor of His Highness. In this case, the girl was sure that if she gave this ointment as a gift, everyone would like it. And now, it was time to start. First, it was necessary to pour freshly picked calendula into a sterilized jar. Secondly, I needed to add orange blossoms to give it a sweet aroma. After this, add enough oil to cover all the calendula and finally add the pine needles, then close the jar. Shami looked at the jars in bewilderment and asked if the medicine would really come out in a month. The princess said that it would become an oil that could be used as medicine. The maid was interested in watching all this, and as a result she said that she hoped that the members of the royal family would like this medicine. Of course, Shami did not yet know that this medicine was actually made for her. This is exactly what Charisse just said, and thus made a surprise. The girl could not believe that the girl made this precious medicine just for her sake. Charisse smiled and said that it was true, because she used not very good medicine when she got hurt. Shami burst into tears, telling the princess that she was very kind, because this maid would at least be a doormat for the girl's feet until her death. After that, she attacked the girl and began to hug her, saying that this was the first time in her life that she had received such a gift. Meanwhile, Nanya Lindensky said that she was very interested in what this calendula medicine would be like. The man smiled and said that as soon as everything is ready, they will also know. Tombi suddenly reminded me of how tasty and excellent the girl prepared the medicine from Ursulum last time. Nanya giggled and said that she was also surprised then. Meanwhile, Shami suddenly called the princess to ask her a question. She asked if it would have been easier to use fermentation magic like last time. Our heroine immediately became thoughtful. How can I explain to her that fermentation and prolonged infusion are two different things? If you do it like with plum syrup, the result will be completely different from what you need. The girl with a sad face said that it probably wouldn't work because she also didn't really know what would happen if she used magic. Shami asked why not. Just in case, try to take the bottle and use a spell on it. Charisse, I also decided that it would be a good idea to test it on one bottle. Nanya suddenly joined the conversation and said that this scene reminded her of her grandmother. She explained this by the fact that, at a time when every house had a recipe for grandmother's medicine, this was before it was forbidden to make your own medicine. Since the time of her mother, the temple of Gafneus began to gain strength. If a family made medicine, they were considered witches. The princess understood that issuing licenses for the sale of medicines for medical activities is of course good, but treating them like witches. Placing a wreath on the girl's head, the woman said that the era of witch hunts was gradually becoming a thing of the past. People began to consider life without the wisdom of the past as natural. Charisse looked at the wreath and asked to be taught how to make the same one. Shami, looking at the cute princess, said that His Highness would definitely like it. Our heroine thought that if this was activated, then the level of knowledge and medicine would be restored again. The day will soon come when she will complete the tasks. Meanwhile, Prince Baikal was preparing for the party. He considered the surprise party something magnificent. Sophia Everville. She said that even if it wasn't magnificent, everything had to be decorated colorfully. She asked if the adoption party only happened once. It needs to be made unforgettable. Baikal eventually agreed with the girl. Clicking his finger, the prince said that he was sure that Princess Charisse loved parties. If you do this, it will be enough. Sophia, looking at all this, said that it turned out delicious, and then added that it was time for the two princes to come. Meanwhile, they were already walking along the path and smelling the aroma that was in the air all the way to the palace. Baikal looked at his sons and was glad that they came. The guy said that they simply couldn't be late for their sister's party. Moreover, they said that they even brought gifts for their sister. With a snap of a finger, they fell as if from thin air. Sophia Everville counted all the gifts and said that this was the largest number of gifts the princesses had ever received. Baikal was sure that he wanted to flatter him. However, he decided that he would accept it in a good mood only today, and this was only for Charisse. Then the prince waved his hand and said that it was time for the main character to go on stage. At the same moment, he launched fireworks. Just a moment later, Charisse noticed bright flashes and asked what it was. Nanya Lindensky said that apparently the preparations were completed. The woman said that there was something that His Majesty had prepared for her. Charisse was a little surprised by this. After some time, they came to the palace. As soon as the girl saw all this, she was incredibly happy. Seeing the huge cake, she couldn't believe that it was all for her. Charisse was also greeted by her brothers at this celebration. Gurgis said that they were all tired of waiting. Most likely it was because of her short legs that they walked for so long. As soon as Idzis noticed the wreath, he immediately said that it suited her very well. After that, he leaned over to her and asked if such a beautiful wreath would be for him, although the princess said that she would, but before that she must hand over the wreath to the most important person. Running up to Dad, she extended her hands and said that this wreath was for him. She couldn't give it to the twins first without noticing anything. Putting the wreath on his head, the prince said that it suits him quite well. Gurgis was shocked that even his father put a wreath on his head. A moment later, Charisse approached the brothers and said that these wreaths were also for them. Smiling, Idzis asked his sister to put the wreath on his head herself. Gurgis was on the verge. As soon as Idzis stood with a wreath on his head, he told his brother that their sister did this for them. Then, what's the problem with wearing a wreath? Charisse looked at him and told him to put it on. Gurgis, he screamed in rage and said that he didn't like this. Why would he wear this? The princess smiled and said that if he wears it, he will be a good brother. Gurgis was not prepared for such a brutal blow. He tried to say something else, but Charisse interrupted him and said that she was small and therefore couldn't hear anything. Having removed the wreath, the girl resigned herself and said that he didn't have to wear it. She'll give it to someone else. The guy looked away and said that he couldn't wear something so girly. Idzis and the little princess began to laugh together, not understanding what the logic was. Our heroine laughed and told her brother to learn to speak normally. Still, the same furious Gurgis said that he speaks better than them. Suddenly, he snatched the wreath and said that from the very beginning, his sister wanted to give it to him, so this is his thing. As soon as the wreath was in Gurgis' hands, the princess told him that if he took it, he must wear it. This rule is. Gurgis still could not withstand the pressure, so in the end, he still agreed to put a wreath on his head. Charisse immediately said he was cute. Idzis came over and asked what about him. The princess smiled and said that he was cute too. Just at that moment, Prince Baikal called the girl. Picking her up in his arms, he was going to say something important. Leaning in front of her, he said that the adoption process was completely completed. From now on, no matter what anyone says, she is his daughter. Looking around, the girl looked at her now family. Even though she was handicapped, she was still family. However, they were missing one detail. The girl asked if they had a mother and where she was. Looking at the brothers, she noticed how quickly they turned pale. Is she really dead? Within a moment, the guys laughed and said that there was no way to describe her face. Everything was fine with the mother. They were just divorced from the father. Idzis said that their mother is too bright a person to live only in the palace all the time. Passing the cherry on the cake, the guy said that he has a brilliant intellect. Their mother is the dean of the specialized Yen's Academy. Yen's Specialty Academy is the academy the twins attend. In that case, if their mother is the dean of a school for geniuses among all geniuses, how smart is she? Charisse immediately said that she would also like to meet her. Idzis told her that if her mother found out about Charisse's adoption, she might propose marriage again. As soon as Baikal heard that the topic had gone beyond the academy, he told Gurgis that he had one question for him. This time, he did not receive his report card. Had he hidden it again? The guy's face changed in the blink of an eye. His Majesty sighed heavily and said that today he would close his eyes to this, but the report card was supposed to be on his desk by tomorrow. Deciding that it was time to have fun, Gurgis invited his sister to open one of the gifts, because they all belonged to her. Taking one of the boxes in her hands, she finally realized what it meant to be a princess, but still couldn't believe that it was all hers. It was hard for her all the time because she had to worry about assignments and losing, but at least for today she could calm down. Suddenly the girl began to think. Once an accident occurs and she loses, everything she has gained will be lost. At this moment, a window with hints popped up. Since today is a good and joyful day, she decided that there would be something good there. However, should she pretend to fall for their trick and still take the hint? At the same moment, she asked to see a hint. The hint said that on Dragon Street you can buy data about save points. Even if she loses, she can start the desired stage again. Charisse was incredibly happy that she didn't have to start from the moment Alexandra stepped on her. At that moment, she remembered that the entrance to the Dragon Street alone cost 1,000 stones. The treasure chest will cost at least another 50 million. She realized that she could go to Dragon Street in a month after completing the task with the ointment. By then, she will already be used to the feeling of a real family. She said "Dad" under her breath, and a moment later, Baikal seemed to appear behind her, who asked if she called him. Without waiting for an answer, he added that in any case he had something to show his daughter. Taking her in their arms, they walked forward. Charisse asked what he was going to show her. The answer was one word: tree. After some time they came. The names of these plum trees were Idzis and Gurgis. It has only been 12 years since they were planted, so they are shorter than other trees. The guy said that when bearers of the Wynn surname are born, a tree is planted on this alley. Usually his father sits him down. Prince Baikal told his daughter that today he will plant a tree here. Charisse immediately realized that this would be her tree. Just at that moment, Solip stood behind with a sprout and a shovel with which they would dig a hole for the tree. The girl, looking at her father and Solip discussing planting a tree, thought that if they used magic, they would have done it in the blink of an eye. But nevertheless, she felt sincerity on her father's part. This made my heart begin to beat faster. After some time, Baikal said that he was finished. The tree was planted, and there was a sign on it: Charisse Wynn Castalia. His Highness said the plaque was made of gold with her name engraved on it. He ordered it especially for today. At that moment, the man called his daughter and said that although he was not her biological father, she had definitely inherited the Wynn surname. Patting her on the head, he asked her not to forget this and always wear her with pride. First of all, she is now his daughter, our heroine thought at that moment. In fact, she was unsure whether she was a real princess. Alexandra looked more like a princess than she did. However, she will be herself. Just at that moment, the girl was called to eat a delicious cherry cake. Feeling the wind blowing, feeling all the love from those around her, Yoon Chae-ri clearly understood that she did not want to leave the game. She wants to live here for a long, long time. The action moves to another palace. Meanwhile, dishes were flying there, which first hit the maid. She broke the news that Charisse was adopted. Of course, this loud child was Alexandra, who already hated the princess and promised to repay her for her humiliation. No one dares insult her. Meanwhile, the maids were actively carrying gifts, and thought that there were as many of them as gifts for the harvest festival. As soon as His Majesty was released, he placed the princess under house arrest. Now the princess was so angry that it was not worth attracting her attention. Rumors that the princess tore the forehead of one of the maids because of her appearance had already spread throughout the palace. Meanwhile, Jessica listened to Alexandra, who was shocked that Baikal adopted Charisse. Then she asked how many gifts that bad girl got. The girl desperately wanted to go home. She didn't know how to tell the princess that the girl who was recently bullied by Alexandra had already received 3,000 gifts today. The girl was grateful that she was a servant to the princess, but she did not think that it would be so difficult. Alexandra asked in bewilderment why her maid was standing silently. She still wanted to know how many gifts Charisse received. Jessica didn't want to get hit on the head with anything else. Just at this moment, you can tell her to come to her aid. Some voice said that the girl received a lot of gifts. The guy laughed and added that, according to rumors, there were more than 3,000 gifts there. Where did they all come from? The maid, as soon as she saw this boy, turned her head away. Every time she looks at this child, she gets goosebumps. This guy walks silently, and the shadows from the candle flames always begin to fluctuate. Jessica felt that she was becoming uneasy. Although everyone tells her that it's just her imagination, at that moment the guy said that the pearl-caged ruby birds that Alexandra wanted so badly were also sent there. The guy also added that there were rumors that Princess Charisse's biological father was a dragon. Alexandra bit her finger out of nerves. She was sure that this could not happen, and the girl was simply deceiving everyone. Bending down in front of the princess, the boy finally added that the princess also illegally produces medicine, and 5 days ago the high priest died. The girl realized that this means that a new one will appear soon, which means he will arrive at the palace to greet them. She will immediately tell him what Charisse is doing. Alexandra asked the guy to go to the ministry and find out when the new high priest would arrive. He had originally intended to pay a welcome visit there. She understood that she felt sorry for the Blessed One who didn't even have parents. So she left her here, and she in turn decided to respond to her kindness like this. Alexandra couldn't understand how someone like Wynn could touch her. She decided that she should give her a Gen-style revenge gift. The girl asked the maid to contact Genovia. On the day of Shintaburi, instead of presenting something, she will turn people's eyes to Charisse. The action moves forward a month. One morning, for some unknown reason, Charisse was crying and screaming, saying that it was deadly. Girgis in bewilderment, he asked what could be mortally dangerous in the fact that he does not show her his familiar. Charisse knew for sure that if she didn't see him now, she would simply die of curiosity. What if the familiar was a rabbit? The guy started squeezing Charisse's cheeks and telling her that he needed to go train and she should get out of here. As soon as the guy went to training, the princess thought that Shintaburi was supposed to be in a few days. She didn't know if she should stop begging to see her familiar. Perhaps His Majesty the Emperors are the real owner of the Joker rabbit, in which case there is no need to ask the brothers to show their familiars. Watching her brother learn fencing, the princess decided that she would have to stop for today. By now, the calendula-infused oil should be ready. Now it's time to slowly complete the task. The girl approached one of the knights and asked him to take a walk. The guy said that he would be happy to take her on his back. After some time, the guys came to the kitchen. Meanwhile, the maid greeted the princess joyfully. Shami told her that she came just when everything was ready. The girl, in bewilderment, said that this would be enough to distribute the ointment to all the courtiers of the palace. As soon as she sniffed, she felt a very pleasant aroma thanks to pine needles and oranges. Shami, who had already learned the entire recipe, told the princess that it was time to mix it with wax. After that, she asked Charisse if she could add geranium oil. The girl said that if you add this now, it will be completely ready. After some time, the ointment and calendula oil cream was ready. She helped with skin problems, scars, atopic dermatitis, and rashes. Now it would be good to know how effective this medicine is. Just at that moment, a notification arrived advertising lenses that could be used to test the effectiveness of the medicine. The discounted price was 1,500 stones. The girl understood that she was once again on the leash of some scammers, but thanks to the timer, she could not restrain herself and still bought it. Within a moment, it was as if the princess's purchase had descended from heaven to earth. Suddenly, she realized that she knew she needed to insert lenses. But how would she use them? Running up to her father, the girl asked if he was busy. Baikal said that he is very busy. In response to this, the princess said that despite the fact that he is busy, he needs to spend time with Sherry. In the Palace of the 100 Knights, there is a wizard who does a little magic here and there, but her dad has come. Baikal told his daughter that if in the future she needs magic, she can call him. In any case, she was sure that he would be busy. Meanwhile, there was a crowd of people in the aisle, talking about an important meeting awaiting them. They are no longer waiting for recycling. Looking at the people, the princess looked like a worker about to collapse from overwork. Unexpectedly, Prince Baikal asked his daughter if she didn't like seeing her dad often. The girl also did not expect this, and said that she did not say such a thing. Charisse was surprised that Dad didn't feel the little helpers looking at him. She looked at him and asked if Dad was going to work. As always, the princess's cuteness couldn't help but break Baikal's hard ice, so if his daughter asked for it, then nothing could be done. The whole crowd once again began to admire the princess, telling her how great she was, although all this was to be expected from her. At that moment, the princess showed the ointment cream and asked to help her with this. Baikal immediately asked the crowd of assistants to go first to the office. They began to say that this was unfair, to which His Majesty said that she was his daughter. Finally, he told his assistants that he would be there in 10 minutes, so they should prepare everything. As soon as all the people left, Prince Charisse asked his daughter if these were all the ointments that Charisse was talking about. Will there be at least one here for him? She knew that if she told her dad that he was already strong, trouble would inevitably follow. That's why she said that there would be even better medicine for him. After some time, the prince used his magic, and thanks to this, all the creams froze. Charisse thanked her father for his help. While the girl was looking at the ointments, she received a notification saying that to use the lens, she had to blink 3 times. The princess did as she was told and eventually saw information about the cream. The effectiveness was 100%, and the shelf life was 1 year. Our heroine immediately gave the first jar to Shami because she started all this for her. The maid was incredibly grateful to the princess. At that moment, the girl decided that for distribution among the population, it would be nice to indicate the expiration date on the packaging. As soon as she completed the first part of the task, she received 100 million stones as a reward, which will be paid out immediately. Now the girl realized that she had so much money that she could try to open the treasure chest. Shami and Baikal looked at the princess in the meantime and thought how cute she was. However, she could not understand why nothing was working because she said, "Activate." Deciding to look at the clue, she realized that the chest could only be activated on the Dragon Street with shops. At that moment, Baikal called Sherry and said that he needed to go, because she said that he looks best when he works. As he was leaving, he told her that if she needed something or was curious, she could call him whenever she wanted. A moment later, the girl ran up to her father and asked him to wait. She was still curious about something. She asked if she could use magic because she wanted to do like Dad. She had been interested in this for a long time and wanted to ask about it. She knew that if she could use magic, she would be able to complete the achievements even faster. Baikal sat down in surprise and asked if she really wanted to learn magic. The answer, of course, was a resounding yes. The guy said that she could, or rather her dragon heart would help her. She may not be able to use complex magic, but if she learns to draw a magic circle, then everything will work out. Patting her on the head, he said that Idzis was now having a nap, so if she went to the ministry now, she would be in time for him to wake up. Baikal said that his son is much more authoritative in magical circles than he is, so it would be better to ask him, and he will advise her. The prince also asked to give the ring to Idzis, because it is very important and should be worn around the neck. Following this, Shami asked to take some ointment with her as a gift. She was sure that he would be happy with her. Our heroine knew that if she now studied magic and went to Dragon Street, it would coincide perfectly in time. It's time to learn magic. Gurgis walked with her, who, of course, also had business to do. But since there was no accompanying knight, he said that he would conduct it himself. When the guy put his sister into the carriage, she asked when she would have her own personal knight. The guy said that it is usually given at the age of 10, and until then she is safe. Looking at Gurgis, she said that in this case he would take care of her for up to 10 years. Already in the carriage, Charisse asked her brother why he did not sit opposite him like a real knight, to which the guy said that this was so that she would not fall out of the carriage. The girl asked not to be treated like a child. Starting to pull her cheeks, Gurgis told her that she was the child. After some time, the princess woke up from the voice of her brother, who told her that they had already arrived, so she needed to get up. The girl immediately rushed to the window to look at the local landscapes. Gurgis almost jumped at that moment. He grabbed her and asked her to be careful. Meanwhile, before Charisse's eyes, a luxurious palace could be seen which was incredibly huge. This is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Suddenly, the girl looked at her brother in horror and asked, since when he began to feel cool, a guy standing on the street extended his hand to his sister and told her that you always need to pretend to be cool when you are outside. The girl got out of the carriage and told Gurgis that he should have warned her about this earlier. After some time, the guys were inside the palace. Charisse immediately started showing off her cuteness. She was grateful to people for taking care of her brothers. Moreover, as a sign of gratitude, the princess prepared gifts for people. Gurgis said that Sherry did it. This medicine can be smeared on wounds and it smells very tasty. Looking around, Charisse thought, is it worth looking for supporters here? In any case, this will melt the hearts of exhausted office workers. The girl suddenly screamed, saying that she cares about the people who care about her brothers. People were immediately captivated by this cute creature. Just by looking at it, they felt a surge of energy. One of the servants sat down and said that after spending a lot of time only with people like Idzis and then meeting Charisse, the world immediately lights up. Nevertheless, the guy said that outwardly, Idzis also illuminates the world. But at that moment, the other guy said that with his character, he makes it darker. So the result is 0. They all meant that Charisse would come to them much more often. Suddenly, Idzis came into the room, hit the wall and asked why it was so noisy here during his vacation. At the same moment, Charisse came running to him and immediately began to hug him. The guy asked what she was doing here. She smiled and said that Sherry also wants to learn magic, so his brother should teach her. In this case, Idzis said that they should go from here. There is no need to stand still. As soon as they entered the room, Gurgis said that he would go to sleep, and Charisse immediately began to hand over gifts. Taking off the chain from her neck, she said that this gift was given to him by their father. The guy looked at the ring in bewilderment and laughed. Within a moment, he put the ring back on his sister's neck. Charisse said in bewilderment that Dad instructed her to give it to her. Idzis explained this by saying that she would need this ring much more than he. The guy could not even think that their father would watch them through the necklace. Meanwhile, Baikal was indeed sitting in his office and, thanks to the ring, watching the children. He couldn't stop admiring his daughter. She was so sweet that even just looking at her was incredibly touching. As it turned out, the meeting was supposed to be going on all this time. All the assistants were embarrassed, but His Highness sparkled with happiness. Solipai asked the prince why, if he was so worried, he didn't go with them. The reason was that his daughter thinks that dad is cool when he works. Solip. Of course I understood, but then for the sake of decency, it was necessary to at least work. In turn, the prince closely watched his daughter and was worried that she would not get hurt. All assistants knew that His Highness is always 100% focused, but today he is on pins and needles. Unexpectedly, one of the girls said that she had a feeling that he was a little stupid, but now this feeling has become stronger. Apparently, His Highness still has a secret affection for Kiana. At that moment, the prince shouted, saying that Charisse had just wanted to pick a flower. But something strange happened. Solip asked in bewilderment what happened. Baikal said that he was talking about this kid who pretended to be sick and fell on the ground in front of his daughter to attract attention. Solip looking at this boy, he said that he actually looks sick. However, Baikal said that he will check it out, because he has had a bad feeling lately. After some time, Solip went through the documents in bewilderment, saying that they could not find information about that boy. Judging by his clothes, he is from a noble family. He has gray hair and a handsome face, as well as an unusual color combination. The prince understood that Solip did not know this boy, just like him. He had not been seen before, but he was already confused by the guy's purple eyes. At this moment, Solip, just like the prince, shouted in one voice, "This is the same family that disappeared after the battle on the Great Plain." Meanwhile, the princess sat next to her brother and drew. She already knew that the type of magic circle depends on the type of person. Idzis told her that studying magic circles is also a way of understanding the essence of people. They borrow the dragon's magic, so theoretically anyone can be a magician. Taking the piece of paper in his hands, he asked his sister what kind of magic she wanted to perform. The girl said that she wanted the wind to blow. A moment later, the leaf began to disappear. After this, the guy asked his sister how strong the wind she wanted. Within a moment, Idzis told his sister that magic is actually the science of imagination. We must not forget this. Charisse immediately ran up to her brother and hugged him while starting to thank him. The guy smiled and said that, in fact, he was grateful to her. As soon as the girl turned around, she noticed her brother, who had been lying and sleeping all this time. She didn't even want to wake him, because he slept very well. In this case, you needed to keep yourself busy with something. She turned to Idzis and asked if she could go out for a while. The guy told her that she could go wherever she wanted, but not leave the palace. The princess was delighted. She decided that she would walk around the area to see all the beauty of this place. As soon as Charisse left, Gurgis also woke up. He asked why the guy said that to his sister. He then asked what was wrong with Charisse loving to hug everyone so much. What Idzis meant by this is that you can't hug anyone. Such contact can be used to poison. Gurgis in bewilderment, he asked his brother who would dare poison their sister. The guy said that anyone can do this. After that, he sent a piece of paper and asked to read it. A moment later, Gurgis asked if this really meant that the Holy Pope had died. While serving several gods, including Hafnius, the Holy Pope, who ruled all the temples, died in secret. Idzis initially thought that he would die soon after coming of age, but it was too fast. It's as if they specifically want to change the generation. Idzis said that on the day of the Pope's death, a new Pope was found among the children in the main church. Gurgis said that this is not surprising. Then the guy thought about it. He asked if this meant the new dad could propose to Charisse. Idzis smiled and said that his brother understood him correctly. An 8-year-old child is chosen by the Pope, and after 10 years he is sacrificed to God. The Pope who sacrifices himself for the well-being of the empire has the right to marry one of the princesses. Politically, her status as dad's wife is quite high, so high that people can poison her. Idzis said that if Charisse becomes dad's wife, then when he claims the throne, it could definitely help overtake Win. Gurgis, I asked my brother if he understood correctly that they would not allow this to happen. The guy exhaled and said that it was obvious, because Charisse is his younger sister. There are only a few girls among the 5th generation. Jen's family included Alexandra and Lisbel, but Lisbel was not exactly a princess. Although she has the imperial blood of her ancestors flowing in her, she is, after all, a member of Count Organ's family. In the Jin family, there was only Helga. That is, the question is Alexandra, Helga, and Charisse. Of these, Charisse is the only one who is not heir to the throne. Gurgis at that moment, he said that the papacy will also try to get the heir to the throne, so they are obliged to protect the squeak. Approaching his brother, the guy asked if he was speaking correctly. Idzis, in bewilderment, recalled that he wanted a younger brother to play with. Gurgis embarrassedly said that it was a long time ago, and moreover, Charisse has already become a valuable member of the family. In any case, a reception will soon be held in honor of the ascension of the new pope. Dad will personally come to say hello. Gurgis asked, what if Charisse just doesn't come to this appointment? Tapping a folder of documents on the table, Idzis said that they would sort it out. Gurgis at that moment asked what his father thought. Idzis said that their father's power will not help. Killing Dad is tantamount to signing a death contract for yourself. Gurgis understood that if Dad died, a war would start. Idzis laughed and reminded me that there are a lot of candidates there. In any case, Gurgis said that if the issue cannot be resolved diplomatically, he will intervene. Idzis at this moment, he sighed heavily. Gurgis asked what was wrong, because if they destroy everything, then they won't have to think about the wedding. Idzis knew that His Majesty was clearly observing the situation in the papacy. He asked his brother what he could know about politics. It's better to just go and train more. The guy said that he wanted to know what the new dad looked like, and he also promised to train harder. Idzis said he has black hair and red eyes. At that moment, Gurgis said that if he has black hair, then the boy who is now sitting in front of their sister is not Dad. Idzis' eye immediately realized that their sister had caught a rat. Gurgis' ability was to see through. Despite the number of walls, he can see through them. In this case, Gurgis stood up and said that he would go, and Idzis must take care of himself, and he must not allow them to drag Charisse into the papacy. The guy asked his brother to take care of himself because he couldn't always be there. Sitting on the window, Gurgis asked his brother why he was worried about this. They promised to protect the squeak at any cost. Meanwhile, Charisse was walking around the neighborhood and could not even think that there could be such a beautiful courtyard. Suddenly behind her, she heard a rather strange sound that was coming from inside the forest. Despite all the thorns and branches, the girl decided to follow the sounds and find out what made them. As soon as he got far enough, he saw a guy sitting on the ground. Staring at him, she only thought about how handsome he was. Suddenly, she put herself in order by telling herself that these were symptoms of hyperventilation. You had to breathe through your nose. She thought about the need to even out the guy's breathing. She should have found something like a straw. At that moment, a paper bag came into her hand. Putting it to the guy's nose, she asked him to press his nose and mouth and slowly repeat after her. After some time, everything returned to normal, and the girl asked if he was okay. The guy smiled and told her that he was just surprised, but everything was fine. Looking into the girl's deep crimson eyes, he assumed that she was a princess. Charisse said he was right and immediately introduced herself. The guy thanked the princess for helping him, and then he asked to call him Pavel. Looking at him, the princess thought that this name suited him. It sounds as white and fluffy as a polar fox. At that moment, the guy asked what was enchanting the bag because nothing else helped him. Charisse thought about it and said that she just knows this, so from now on she will do the same. Pavel smiled at her and said that he understood her. Charisse asked him what was on her face. The guy told her that there was a cricket crawling through her hair right now. The princess's scream rang out throughout the palace. Once she had gone through all her hair, she asked if there was a cricket on her head. Pavel laughed and said that he was not there, but if he appeared he would catch him. Princess Charisse, looking at her new acquaintance, thanked him and talked about how kind he was. Suddenly, a familiar voice appeared from behind, asking if he was in the way. Gurgis grabbed Charisse, who immediately said that it was her brother. Bending down in front of this freak, he asked if he fell on purpose to attract attention. Charisse asked him to calm down because stress could cause a seizure. At that moment, the princess asked Pavel how he was feeling. The guy asked in bewilderment if the princess was really protecting him now. The guy smiled and said that he was really touched. After that, he thanked her and said that he was fine. Gurgis, he shouted again and said that the squeak of nature is good and protects everyone, but he should not look for benefit in this. Charisse again asked her brother not to scare Pavel. After that, Gurgis began to drag the girl into the palace, but even so, she turned around and said goodbye to her new acquaintance, saying that they would meet again. The guy smiled and said that he would look forward to this meeting as soon as possible. Gurgis turned to Pavel and gestured to him what would happen if he ever offended his little sister. After this, the enraged Gurgis ran from the garden back to the palace. Pavel accompanied them with his gaze all this time. As soon as the guys left, he couldn't contain his laughter. He immediately realized that that child was Charisse, the same little creature that bothered Alexandra. He liked that she was so small and fragile, and if it weren't for the contract, she would not have been brought to his mansion. He came to find out when the new pope would arrive at the palace. Through this action, he discovered something worthwhile. Pavel Igor Aximus. He is a count from the demon world, and with him the demon king commands the demon army. However, for some reason, he is now under contract to serve Alexandra. Demons can only use their power in the human world if he signs a contract. As people said, the air in the human world is so dirty that it becomes difficult to breathe. Pavel could not even imagine that this could happen because of the contract. Nevertheless, thanks to this, he met the child he needed. Having created the airplane, the guy said that he was giving it life. After a moment, he launched it and told him to become his eyes, and also to follow that innocent child. Meanwhile, Charisse was thinking about how much had happened today. She went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and met a handsome boy named Pavel. She tried to bring herself to her senses by saying that if she wanted to go to the store on Dragon Street, then she had to go now, while no one was there. It was simply unknown when the game might end. She needed to find a save point. Meanwhile, she was packing things in the closet, thinking that this would be her cover. If the maids do not find her in bed and make a fuss, she will simply say that she slept in the closet. Either way, she was ready to go to Dragon Street. She asked the system to give her the key. Having purchased an offer for 1,000 stones, the system told her to draw a heart in the air and then she would be able to enter. Deciding that there was nothing to be done and she certainly didn't have time, she should have walked faster. Charisse quickly drew a heart in the air. A moment later, a new space appeared in the closet, into which a heart-shaped portal led. Our heroine was delighted literally every time she came here. At that moment, someone behind was shouting that for 100 gems you could get an item, and maybe someone would be able to hit the jackpot. It was that same lottery machine with low prices that gives out useless items. But sometimes something very useful or expensive comes out. The girl approached this guy and said that she wanted to try her luck. The most precious of these things was the dragon's staff. The item you want will appear if it hits the floor like a demonic bat. It can only be used 100 times. So many players have spent all their stones here. Raising prices is a risky game after all. However, this time everything is different. She always lost here, but this time she had a good feeling. After some time, a disappointed Charisse lay on the floor, thinking that her good feeling had ruined everything. She received a durable rope ladder that will withstand even a ton without breaking. Also, one of the rewards was endless bread. Every time you break it, new bread appears. And finally, the seeds of fire. If you peel them and throw them into the firewood, a fire will light up. It was all a bunch of useless items. Charisse decided that she should activate the treasure chest. However, if she buys it, she will only have 50 million gems left. In just a moment, she bought it. After some time, Charisse entered a tavern and said hello to the seller. The girl immediately began calling the man inside. She said that Charisse was the first person she had seen in a long time. The girl thought that dragons are strict when it comes to etiquette. In particular, they believe that the most important thing is to be polite to elders. When these settings were released, people even called it the Confucian dragon. The girl greeted with Confucian etiquette. After that, she said that she came here to buy a gift for her grandfather. The saleswoman thought it was very nice that the girl came here for a gift for her grandfather. For example, her grandchildren don't even visit her. After that, she told the girl that she could choose anything. After some time, Charisse understood only one thing. In fact, there are a lot of drugs sold on the market without a prescription. This game was truly realistic. In addition to all this, she also found antihistamines. If all goes well, she might even be able to give them to her grandfather. Looking out with some kind of box, the girl asked the saleswoman what it was. She said that she brought it from afar, but it was of no use. Charisse decided that she would not tell the seller why she needed it, because if you let the seller know that you need the item, she will raise the price for it. First, we needed to find save darts. She started looking around the shelves, but they were nowhere to be found. However, she is short and could not see everything. The saleswoman laughed and said that if she wants to look up, she can use magical power to fly up, because she has the heart of a dragon, an advanced race. This is what dragons call the royal family. Looking into the girl's eyes, the woman said that she saw something interesting in her, so she would help her. Having said just one word, within a moment Charisse was in the air. She lifted it with her magic. All the most expensive items were visible on the top shelves. For example, there were pieces of paper that cost 500 million. For what? At that moment, a window appeared in front of our heroine. It said that if she took the card and registered as a user, she would be able to download everything she knew. The girl immediately thought about it. What does calling a building mean? Did this really mean that an entire pharmacy could be summoned? If this is the case, then she will be able to complete many more tasks. After some time, Charisse finally found those same save darts. The price for one was 50 million stones. It is very expensive. The girl immediately turned to the saleswoman and asked if she could make a discount. The woman asked what discount she was interested in. Charisse smiled and told her that she needed a discount of only 4,000 stones. The woman immediately began to say that the girl should not get into debt with the dragon through negligence. Having descended to the ground, the princess told her that if she makes a discount on an unnecessary thing, she will often come here to buy gifts for dad and brothers. The woman also couldn't resist Charisse's charm and said that this time the cutie won. Looking at the amount of medicine in the first aid kit box, Charisse understood that everything was there, even digestive aids and antihistamines. The princess tried not to show the saleswoman how pleased she was. The woman suddenly said that this could make her mouth cramp. Suddenly there was a very loud crash. The fall was so strong that even the wall of the store was cracked. The saleswoman went out into the street in bewilderment, asking what kind of disgusting behavior this was in front of someone else's precious store. At this moment, most of the market was covered with dust, from which some kind of silhouette emerged. A moment later, a guy with black hair and red eyes came out. As soon as he said the princess's name, the guy immediately fell to the ground. Charisse couldn't believe that this child just said her name. And her real name. Not understanding how he knew her name, the girl ran to him to find out if he was okay. Opening his eyes, he told Charisse that he was incredibly glad to see her. The princess decided that she had heard it all, because how could the character know her name? Charisse suddenly noticed that without any expression on his face, he seemed like a handsome boy. Nevertheless, she understood that his condition was very bad. First of all, it was necessary to start treating him. At that moment, a saleswoman approached and asked what this terrible smell was. The princess asked for help to cure him, but the woman refused because of the smell. Charisse, in bewilderment, said that it was a simple smell of blood, to which the saleswoman shook her head and said that it was not him. This is the smell of sacrifice. People around looked at the boy with condemnation and could not understand why the victim came to the sacred kingdom of dragons. At that moment, a window with a task appeared in front of our heroine. Although the person's identity was unknown, a patient is a patient, his wounds must be healed. Charisse was of course grateful for the task, but she would have cured him without it. Taking out the first aid kit, the princess decided that first of all she needed to start with disinfecting the wound. The next step was to stop the bleeding and finally bandage the wounds. The woman said that she would help the princess because it would be difficult for her to cope with such small hands. Charisse smiled and thanked her. Looking around, the girl told people who had been watching all this time and did nothing to go about their business and not interfere with them. Having started to use magic, the saleswoman suggested that if she bandaged the boy's wounds, the vile smell should decrease. As soon as they began to bandage him, the stranger began to groan in pain. Charisse asked him to be patient for a while. At this moment, our heroine stared a little at the boy. This made her even speechless. The dragon woman came up to her and said that he looked noble. Charisse swallowed her saliva and agreed with her. Suddenly, the princess, in bewilderment, discovered that the stranger had new wounds. His wounds kept opening up. It felt like someone invisible was attacking him. At that moment, the saleswoman said that the guy looked like he was confused in time, and his fate was distorted. Something most likely happened in this guy's future, and that's why he returned to the past. In the process of all this, the problem of time arose. Apparently, he merged with himself in the current time period, which means that what happened to him in the future affects his body here. Besides, her healing magic doesn't work. It was all because the guy has God. The blessing does not seem to work on those under the dragon's protection. Charisse asked if they had a doctor. The woman, perplexed, asked why dragons might need a doctor. After that, she said that the guy certainly didn't come here for the dragon's help. Leaning down, she said that most likely this boy came here to meet Princess Charisse. The girl could not understand why, in this case, he needed her. At that moment, the guy began to make sounds. The girl approached him, deciding that she needed to tie the bandages again. But with the last of his strength, the guy stood up and grabbed her hand with the words, "Found." She asked in bewilderment if he really said that, After that, the guy began to speak, but for some reason he could not be heard at all. The princess said that she could not hear him, so she asked the stranger if he had somewhere to go. House? Name? Is he actually okay? Having started to say something, the guy said that he could not return, because if he was caught, at that moment he could no longer speak. His head fell on Charisse. Nevertheless, she was glad that he was breathing, but she simply could not leave him like that, just like she could not wait for him. So she took the boy with her and hid him in her closet. This is by far the best solution. Although she didn't know who he was, he knew Charisse in the future. She decided that she needed to help him and find out at least something. Having given him an antipyretic, she understood that the guy could be her friend. There were a lot of things to ask him when he woke up. Leaning over him, Princess Charisse wished him sweet dreams, and also said that they would meet as soon as he woke up. The very next morning, the guy stood over the princess's bed and looked at her. Sitting down with her on the edge of the bed, he realized that she really had the habit of taking treatment every time she saw a sick person. The guy admitted that he returned to this hell only to meet her. However, the future without her was no different from hell. Looking out the window, he told her that he would like to stay here longer, but he had to leave. Turning over to the other side, even through sleep, Charisse asked her friend not to get sick. Smiling, he took out a branch and said that he would put a sign and leave. He hoped that she would remember him every time she saw him. Having wished pleasant dreams to the princess, he left her chambers and completely disappeared. Meanwhile, the maid who was making a tour of the palace saw that the doors to the princess's room were open. Upon entering, she decided that she was already up. As it turned out, Charisse was sleeping soundly at that time. In this case, she decided that it was just her imagination. Some more time passed, and finally the morning of the Shintaburi holiday arrived. Charisse was glad that she could finally see her grandfather. While Sophia was putting her in order, the princess looked at the flower and thought about where that boy had gone, even though he said goodbye to her. However, she could not understand how he even knew that she was on the Dragon Street that night. Was she really telling him about this from the future? But then you couldn't tell this to just anyone, which means they were close. In this case, she was interested in what actually happened in the future. She hoped that something terrible didn't happen there. Nevertheless, she understood that otherwise the guy would not have just come to her. If he went back in time to find her, then they will meet him someday. At that moment, she asked the nanny what dress she should wear today. Snapping her fingers, she said that if the princess did not like these, then they still had many more dresses prepared. Shami and Henna ran after them at the same moment. Sophia Everville. I told the princess that all the capital's stores had prepared dresses for the princess. So the first was an elegant blue dress, the highlight of which was a tiara with sapphires. Following it was a cute dress with a floral pattern. Bright colors are sure to attract the attention of the public. There were still a whole bunch of dresses. The princess's maids told her to choose the one she wanted. After some time, the girl finally came out and showed the dress that she liked. At the same moment, the girls began to say that this dress suits Charisse very well, and she looks like a flower. In this case, the choice was obvious. Having asked when her brothers would come, the nanny said that they would be there soon, but for now he could eat chocolate chip cookies. While she was eating this cookie, thanks to its taste, she felt how it relieved fatigue. At the same moment, the brothers burst into the room. Approaching her sister, they began to squeeze her, saying that this unusual dress suited her. Today my sister was like a flower fairy. The princess screamed sharply and began to tell Gurgis not to appear so abruptly, because she was scared. He looked so much like a little child. The guy immediately began to pull his sister's cheeks and tell her that she was younger than him, and her mouth was completely smeared with chocolate. Charisse asked to wipe it down. Gurgis was proud, so he laughed and asked if she was really telling the great Gurgis to wipe his younger sister's mouth. This even made his ears clog. Approaching Idzis, the girl said that in this case, her brother should live with blocked ears, and she would ask Idzis to help her. Shami, looking at the guys, told Sophia that she was very surprised, because both princes were so caring, although earlier there were rumors that they were so indifferent that they didn't want to talk. Apparently they too simply fell for the princess's cuteness and could not act as indifferent. Meanwhile, the guys were in a little confusion because they heard everything the maids were saying. Nevertheless, the princess approached the maid and asked her to give her the bag. Shami asked where she was. The girl said that she was talking about the first aid kit that she told Sophia to make a few days ago. She put there the ointment she made and the Shami ointment from 10 years ago. She will prove that her ointment is much better. She also put some antihistamine in there for Grandpa, which meant it was time to go. Turning to her brothers, she told them it was time to run. After some time, the guys were in the carriage. The princess asked if it was true that today was Shintaburi Day. The guys nodded in bewilderment and asked why she was asking the obvious. Charisse asked why, in this case, the brothers did not prepare anything for His Majesty the Emperor. The guys immediately looked at each other and laughed, saying that their sister shouldn't worry about them. Gurgis told her that they had prepared an offering, and Idzis added that they had prepared something special. The girl felt that something was wrong here. After some time, the guys arrived at the Emperor's palace. Although the princess expected that the place where the Emperor lived would be magnificent, she did not know that it would be so magnificent. Looking at the luxurious golden vase, she thought that she wanted to check whether it was pure gold. The brothers laughed and said that the sisters seemed to want to test the gold for a tooth. After that, Idzis said that they are now heading to the royal residence of the banquet hall. Gurgis added that the squeak will sit between them. At that moment, both brothers extended their hands to their sister and asked if the little sister was going to take their hands. The girl, of course, said that she would take it, but it was unexpected that they both suddenly reached out to her. Gurgis, I told my sister that she was so weak that as soon as she looked into her grandfather's eyes, she would faint. The guy scared her and said that some child had already fainted, and his grandfather ate him. The princess asked her brother not to scare him, and Idzis at that moment added that although grandfather did not eat for anyone, it was true that some guy fainted. The girl immediately realized that she had put on the veil for a reason. Although she didn't wear it because she was afraid, she was really nervous that His Royal Majesty would see it. This man fought the Dragon Lord with his bare hands. He himself was neither a dragon nor a man, and had lived for hundreds of years. Everyone only talks about the greatness of the Emperor, but if she were in his place, then living in a world that all the people important to him had left, she would be lonely. After some time, the guys entered the hall and everyone greeted them. Looking around, the princess thought that this was to be expected from an event in the imperial palace. Everything was truly grandiose. At that moment, the girl turned back and noticed the stranger's gaze. Within a moment, he was approaching them, continuing to cast these terrible glances. It was Genovia Wynn Castalia. As soon as he approached the princess and brothers, Gurgis and Idzis at the same moment pulled their sister along with them. The girl, looking at her brother Gurgis, understood that jokes with him were bad. At one time, Gurgis was one of the characters Yoon played most often. She thought she knew everything about his character, but it turned out that he was more picky than he thought. However, it was most likely due to her character. Gurgis asked the Squeaky not to talk to Genovia, because he is an idiot. The guy, in bewilderment, said that he turned to them only because he thought they were glad to see him. He continued to say that he was worried because he had heard strange stories. He was shocked that they called his sister a useless thing for their home. He talked about how she was Alexandra's worthless toy, and then he asked what their father was sick with. Is this all the work of senile dementia? Looking around, Genovia told those around her that an epidemic of stupidity had begun here. At the same moment, Gurgis could not restrain himself and hit the freak in the face. Looking with his horrifying gaze, the guy told him to repeat his words. Genovia immediately laughed, telling the guy that he had become much more daring. The guy reminded them that someone born later, they managed to claim his throne. At this moment, Charisse said that she was bored. Suddenly, she closed her mouth, realizing that she had said it out loud. The enraged Genovia immediately jumped up and began asking the girl what she just said. He told her that she was trash and a disgrace to their proud Wynn name. At this moment, Idzis intervened, who told the guy that he understood that Genovia would soon leave the palace for the exam. But this did not give him the right to talk to their sister like that. Genovia again asked in bewilderment how they could call her sister. The guy sighed and said that he was not going to explain such things to him. He cares about Charisse because he protects her. He feels uncomfortable as a member of their family when his little sister is bullied. Genovia laughed and asked if Idzis really hopes that this useless thing will help him in the fight for the throne. His team will consist of losers. The guy laughed and said that he had recently heard interesting news, as if there is a nobleman who steals inventions, buying them from commoners. Genovia immediately tensed. Idzis went on to say that someone could use this for the royal family assessment exam. Leaning towards Genovia, the guy said that he should think about who exactly is disgracing the Wynn name. Looking at this freak, Idzis told his useless brother that he can continue to live like a rat. It didn't seem like a particularly difficult request. Realizing that Genovia could not say anything in response, he silently left. Idzis approached the guys and said that it was time for them to go, because His Highness would be coming out soon. Already sitting at the table, the princess was thinking that it was definitely impossible to be at enmity with Idzis. She was lucky that he was her brother, and she was also touched by how he stood up for her. Charisse thought that the guy would not interfere, because he always does everything according to his own calculations. The girl decided that her brother really wanted to protect her. In that case, Idzis was indeed a very smart character. At that moment, the music started playing, so Gurgis immediately went up to his sister and told her that it was time to get up. And here it is, the light leading Castalia, a dragon in human form, father to all people, His Majesty the Emperor. Charisse immediately started jumping around trying to see the Emperor, because she also wanted to see his face. At that moment, the Emperor sat on his throne and ordered all the people to take their places. This meant that Charisse would still be able to look at it. After a couple of minutes, she finally saw him. As it turned out, it was not exactly a grandfather, but a handsome middle-aged man. Suddenly, a window with information about the character appeared in front of Charisse. A special note was that it had been 3 years since he loved peanuts and beer, except he was allergic to peanuts. The princess was shocked that the Emperor had an allergy, but he continued to eat peanuts for 3 years. If he were an ordinary person, he would have died already. An unexpected quest also appeared. Of course, it was necessary to monitor the Emperor's condition and help him find a suitable recipe to eliminate the allergic reaction. Her guess was that everything would end after she gave him antihistamines, but she doubted that the Emperor would believe what the child said. At this moment, the Emperor told the people that they were starting the event, and so one of the people immediately brought his gifts to His Highness. He asked to be allowed to present a product originating from a distant overseas republic. The guy showed me wild ginseng and said that this is a medicine for happy longevity. Charisse was at a loss as to how it could be wild ginseng, since it was usually picked ginseng. Obvious fraud. The Emperor himself was not a fool, so at that very moment he ordered the guards to take this man away. Charisse's grandfather was able to identify counterfeits very quickly. The goods quickly paid for themselves, or the scammers were simply kicked out. The prize from the Emperor was a blank check. It was a fortune. Idzis laughed and said that their grandfather is generous when it comes to what he likes. Suddenly, Genovia came out onto the path to the Emperor, who told his grandfather that for the sake of his grandfather's health, he had brought a gift. His acting looked so good that Gurgis wanted to gouge out his eyes. The Emperor at that moment told Genovia that he was sorry, but he could not accept his gift. As soon as the guy left, Idzis approached his sister and said that now it was their turn. The guy began to say that today they want to give their grandfather something that he had never received before. He pointed to the chair where the princess was sitting and said that this was Charisse Wynn Castalia, the daughter of Caina Wynn Castalia, and also their younger sister. Our heroine was at a loss. Are the brothers really going to present it as a gift? The guy said that even though she is still a child, she can help grandfather get rid of what has been bothering him for so long. They would like to give this opportunity to him. The man was immediately interested in this proposal because he had indeed been tormented by health problems for a long time. Our heroine stood in front of the Emperor and thought that if she was the prepared gift, then there would be nothing left for her. She has no other choice but to charm her grandfather. Looking at Genovia, the girl mentally told him to watch carefully how to charm. The girl approached Rarehood's grandfather and said that she was happy about their first meeting. She said that she came to him today as an everyday pharmacist. The man, looking at this beauty, asked in bewilderment what it meant. She said that she knows that Rarehood's grandfather has been poisoned for a long time, and therefore she will tell him with what. At that moment, a sign with a hidden task appeared in front of her. It was necessary to offer the Emperor another alcohol, and if he was satisfied, she would receive a reward. The girl was once again shocked by the award. Apparently, naming the Emperor's name was a condition for a hidden task. Clenching her fist, the princess thought that she could pay off her debt faster than she thought. Will she be able to meet her cats again? At this moment, the Emperor gazed at the princess without taking his eyes off her. This look made Charisse very tense. She felt as if he was looking at the status window and not at her, or maybe she was imagining it. However, at that moment, Condemning screams began to be heard from behind the girl. People looked at the child and asked who released her and how dare she say such a thing to the emperor. They decided that she had completely lost her mind. The emperor ordered all the people in the hall to be silent because he would decide. After this, the man asked Hewitton to take the princess. After a moment, Rarehood extended his hand to Charisse Wynne Castalia and asked if she could take responsibility for her words. She said a confident yes. In this case, the man once again told her that she should be responsible for her words and actions, and also he would believe her this time. After some time, Gurgi screamed in horror and asked if it was poison. If it wasn't poison, then how could Charisse take responsibility? The girl asked him in a calm voice not to worry. The guy didn't understand how such a pea-sized creature wasn't afraid. Apparently, this is because she did not know her grandfather. Approaching her, he began to pull her cheeks and say that she doesn't know how strict grandfather is. Charisse, in bewilderment, told her brother that she didn't think he was so nervous. At this moment, Idzis approached, who suggested that his little sister had apparently learned something from the dragon. Charisse decided not to prove anything to them. Our heroine also thought about it, because there are already a lot of tasks accumulated. Firstly, distributing ointment. Secondly, choosing medicine for the emperor, and also finding other alcohol. She immediately counted it all. The reward was 100 million stones, then 1,000, then another 100 million, and together that's 210 million stones. However, she knew not to worry, because she had taken antihistamines and ointment with her to distribute. Can she make alcohol? At that moment, the girl thought that she had plum compote. Perhaps the emperor drank different types of alcohol, but he certainly hadn't tried butter wine yet. At that moment, voices began to be heard outside the door. The man said that the emperor had symptoms again, but his 4-year-old granddaughter found a solution. The emperor's assistant said that the girl said that it was poisoning, so he had no choice but to listen to her. Another man, perplexed, said that they should treat the words of the 4-year-old princess with doubt. The men continued to quarrel, deciding that they wanted to get rid of the doctor. Our heroine decided that she needed to go out to them. Gurgis looked at his sister in bewilderment. Hewitton reminded me that a princess is a person who received knowledge from a dragon in a dream. The man, in bewilderment, said that all this was nonsense. At that moment, a door creaked behind them. Charisse thought that they might not hide behind the door, but say everything in person. As soon as she left, she noticed among them the emperor, who stood motionless. He immediately contacted Charisse Wynne Castalia and said that it was not necessary for her to come out to them. It seemed to our heroine that the emperor stood motionless because he wanted to see if she would come out. The girl lowered her eyes down and said that she just wanted to see her grandfather as soon as possible. In this case, he told the girl to follow them. Having already entered the room, he asked her to sit down at her convenience. After that, he said that most likely she had already heard about his symptoms from Idzis. The emperor wanted to know what solution Charisse had to the problem. At that moment, Brother Idzis appeared behind the princess, who handed her the entire list of food that grandfather ate. The attending physician asked in bewilderment what she was going to do with the food appointment records. Charisse was already strained by this man, who continued to pester her. However, she really looked like a child playing doctor. However, they will still look at how the doctor speaks when she finishes. Suddenly, the girl's face changed. There were literally peanuts in every meal, even when it was time for dessert or a late-night snack. The princess asked her grandfather if she knew correctly that he started liking peanuts several years ago, and every autumn his symptoms increase. Rarehood. At this moment, I thought about when he started eating peanuts. At that moment, our heroine noticed redness on her neck. Apparently, these are the symptoms. The attending physician said that the emperor began to like peanuts and macadamia nuts about 3 years ago, but he was wondering how Charisse knew this. Princess Charisse smiled and said that it was all because the peanut harvest season had come again. Hewitton asked in bewilderment what the peanuts had to do with it. Peanuts are harvested from mid-September to early October. Last month was October, now it is November. It is peanuts that are the poison that poisons grandfather. 3 years ago, the emperor became obsessed with peanuts and beer. For different people, certain types of food can be poisonous, for example. For grandfather, it is peanuts. The emperor thought for a moment and asked if this meant that no one was poisoning him. The princess nodded and confirmed his words. Looking at Charisse, the man concluded. She says that normal everyday food can become poisonous depending on the individual, but where did she get this knowledge? The girl immediately said that she received knowledge in a dream. The dragon, whose name she does not know, taught her a lot. The emperor thought. Charisse started saying that it was all true. That creature had 2 horns, and dragons have 2 horns. The emperor sighed heavily and said that he would accept the girl's words because he did not think that she was lying. The attending physician approached the man and explained that, in his own words, Charisse wanted the emperor to eliminate all peanuts from his diet. The princess said that we need to confirm whether the problem is in beans or nuts, so we should eliminate all peanuts. Hueton immediately said that he would ask to expel him. At that moment, Charisse handed over a bottle of pills and said that if he drinks this, he will feel better. Looking at the pills, the man asked her in bewilderment where she got them, and now he hoped that he would not hear the word that the dragon gave them to her. As expected, nothing just happened. She needs to explain everything well. Nevertheless, everything was in order, because she knew that this would happen and therefore prepared in advance.